Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see what if Hulk Deku fell in love with Emily? Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is The Incredible Izuku by Lestat 719. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. It began like any other day. Hisashi had brought his son to the labs to cheer him up. His pride and joy, little Izuku. His quirk exam had not gone great. It had not gone terrible, that is to say, it was not like he was quirkless. The truth of the exam was that he did have a quirk, but the test was inconclusive as to what that quirk was. His body seemed able to draw in some energy. What that energy was or to what end was unknown. More testing would be required, as it was believed that with the seemingly slow rate at which he collected whatever energy he was collecting, his quirk would not be one that would allow him to pursue his and every other 4-year-old's dream of heroics. The news had been devastating. His wonderful wife Inko had called him right away, and he made arrangements to be there to comfort his little boy. It had been a long night, but in the end, though Izuku was still sad, he knew his parents loved him and would be there for him. The next day at school, he came home upset because the other kids were making fun of him, and Kachin, his first friend, didn't want to be friends with him anymore because he was a Deku. Inko was furious and had called Kachin's mother and the school for allowing what amounted to quirk discrimination to take place under their nose. She was not about to let that stand. Hasashi just got out of her way. If anyone saw her, they would have assumed she had the fire quirk and not him. He knew better than to get in her way regarding Izuku. They had wanted to have more children, but Izuku's conception, gestation, and birth had almost seen both of them taken into the afterlife. The next time, the doctors were sure that it would. So they made the only decision they could. She had a complete hysterectomy, and he got a vasectomy. He didn't want any more children if it wasn't with her. Inko was the love of his life. So Hisashi got the security clearance to bring his son to work and show him around the labs. His reasoning was to show his son that you could still do great things in this world, even without a powerful quirk. Hisashi could breathe fire, but that had nothing to do with his job. He was a scientist who was researching the phenomena of dark lightning, otherwise known as terrestrial gamma-ray flash or TGF. Terrestrial gamma-ray flashes, TGFs, are sudden bursts of gamma rays that occur in Earth's atmosphere. These flashes can last only milliseconds and have energies of up to 20 million electronvolts, or 20 megavolts. TGFs are believed to be caused by strong electric fields produced inside or above thunderstorms. Scientists have also found that TGFs produce energetic electrons and positrons. Hisashi had devoted his life to this field of study, the study of this event that occurred during lightning storms. Terrestrial gamma-ray flashes pose a challenge to current theories of lightning, especially with the discovery of the clear signatures of antimatter produced in lightning. The explosion of gamma rays was directed outwards above the planet into space, but what if it could be harnessed? Gamma rays were already being used in sterilization processes and could even treat some sicknesses. If they could solve the puzzle of dark lightning, would that lead them to how antimatter was created in a lightning bolt? What was the relationship between the two? It had been long believed that its penetration power and impossibility to collimate it, the energy conversion efficiency had always been low, and cells were unstable. That was until Hisashi had found a way to keep the gamma rays from penetrating containment, and his partner Dr. Samuel Stearns had created a way to collect and convert the gamma rays into a stable form. Hisashi wasn't supposed to come to work today. Most of the staff was off because it was the start of Golden Week. Everyone had worked hard, and this was their reward. Stable, portable gamma generators have been created. As Hasashi walked down the nearly empty corridors, Izuku listened to his dad talk about all the different things that went on at the lab, and then he took his boy into the lab where he worked every day. The way that his father talked with such passion and conviction resonated deep inside Izuku. A few days ago, it seemed like his world was going to explode. Now, he knew he could still do something extraordinary for the world. Maybe he could build things to help heroes or, better yet, to help everyone. A whole different world was being opened to him. A new universe of possibilities was being laid before him. Hisashi led him into the testing lab and set up a station so Izuku could see actual gamma rays. Izuku marveled at all the strange and wondrous devices around him, his little mind making up extravagant things that the machines did. Hisashi smiled at the look of wonder on his son's face. It seemed like this little trip would be a success, that he could inspire his son to walk a different path. Don't touch anything. I will be right back. I will get a little sample so you can see real dark lightning. Okay. Daddy. Izuku promptly stuck his hands in his pocket to avoid temptation. He learned that lesson at the crystal store with his mom last year. Just thinking of that made his bottom hurt. Hisashi entered the storage vault, entered his code, and opened the first door. He let it shut as he proceeded to the inner door. He froze when that one unlocked, and the lights automatically came on. There should be 20 generators and over 100 storage containers in here. They were missing. Panic immediately ran through him. He turned, ready to hit the alarm on the wall, only to see it gone. Wires hanging from where it once was. Quickly, he turned to exit the room. As the outer door opened, he heard his son. He went to get the dark lightning for me to see. That is so cool, Izuku. He heard the voice of his friend, Izuku's godfather, his partner Samuel Stearns. Why do those men have guns? Guns are illegal. Oh, those aren't real guns. They shoot paintballs. We will play paintball later, but I forgot my paintball gun in the lab. So I had to come get it. Hisashi paused and started to take in some rapid breaths, getting his quirk as warmed up as possible. Sam didn't play paintball. Doing his best to control the tone of his voice, Sam, is that you? He called as he stepped out. Sure enough, it was Sam, kneeling face to face with Izuku, and he wasn't alone. 6 other people were in the room, dressed in black paramilitary attire, their faces covered in weapons ready. He watched as Sam stood up, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder and putting the boy between them. What are you doing here, Hisashi? Sam asked as he pulled a pistol from his pocket. Oh, I just wanted to bring Izuku by the lab. He had been having a rough week, so I wanted to show him that there were other things he could do besides heroics. Hasashi stepped out fully, his hands at his sides, palms out, showing he was unarmed. Come here, Izuku. Izuku went to move, but Sam's hand on his shoulder stopped him. Let my godson stay here for a minute. You should have stood home. I can see that. Hisashi looked around the room frantically. He needed to get Izuku somewhere safe. What are you doing, Samuel? You see, my paintball friends made me an offer, and I said yes. You see, the thing about gamma, as you know, can penetrate the human body very well. It penetrates a lot of things very well. And if you concentrate the burst down through the accelerator collection coil, it will penetrate almost anything or anyone on the planet. He watched as Sam's face contorted into a look of near madness. This wasn't the friend he had known all these years. There are some dangerous people out there, Hisashi, who may need to be stopped. People whose quirks make that nearly impossible, but that ends. Society needs order. It needs balance. Right now, it isn't. There are those at the top and everyone else. Hisashi's mind was racing, trying to figure something, anything that he could do. Please Sam, not. Hisashi looked at Izuku, who was growing more scared by the moment. I would ask you to come with me, but I know you won't. Sam raised the gun behind Izuku's head. But I am not a monster. You will get in the vault, and I will seal you in. Izuku is going to come on a little ride with me. Hisashi went to say something, but the sound of the hammer on the gun being pulled back made him stop. Once I get to a stop, I will release him to the police, and they will call Inko so she can come get him. I am sure they will look for you at that point, and with some luck, they will find you before you run out of air. If I see any bit of green fire, then this goes very fucking different. Don't say a fucking word, just nod your head if you understand. Hisashi nodded his head as he opened the vault and stepped inside. Izuku was trembling in fear when the door closed, and he started to cry. Are we going to let that brat and his father live? The largest of the soldiers asked. Yes, I am, Samuel responded. He turned Izuku to face him. Now, Izuku, if you don't stop crying, I am going to get mad, and if I get mad, then some bad things might happen to you, your daddy, and your mommy. I don't want to be a monster, Izuku, but I can be if you make me. Izuku didn't understand. He just wanted his dad to go home, but in the movies, he just had to be good until the hero came to save him. Izuku wiped his tears and nodded, stifling his crying. Yes, sir, he whispered. See, problem solved. Now, finish getting everything loaded, disable the lock on the vault, and fucking move. He took Izuku's hand a little rough and started to pull him along. Once they left the room, the large man turned to one of his associates. Wait 2 minutes. Open that door and shoot that motherfucker in the face. Izuku was led out to another part of the labs that he had never seen before. His uncle told him to climb in the back of a truck that had a metal top over the back. When he climbed in, he saw a bunch of boxes lining the walls, all strapped down. At the back of the truck, up against the cab, there were 2 seats. A different person took his hand gently and led him to the seat. A woman's voice told him, "You just need to sit here and don't cause any trouble, okay? Just be good. I promise I will get you home safe. Can you do that, Izuku?" Her voice was gentle and reaffirming, making him feel she would protect him. "Was it your daddy that brought you here?" Izuku could only nod as he held back the tears, thinking about his dad. "Okay. Where is your daddy?" "He is in the lab, in the room with lightning," Izuku said as she strapped him in nice and secure. He saw a bit of her hair poking out from under her helmet. It was a pretty purple and bluish color. "Your hair is beautiful," he whispered, grasping at anything to no cry. "Thank you. Now stay in that seat and don't move, okay? Do everything I tell you because we go beyond." She turned and walked from him. His eyes lit up. Every kid knew that phrase, plus ultra, he whispered. "Sir, we have a situation," she called into her comms. Hisashi he had to hope what Samuel said was true, but he was smart enough not to trust it or that those working with Samuel would honor his former friend's words. When the door opened, he had at least part of the answer. Hisashi was no trained fighter, a pro hero, or anything of that nature. He was in great shape because his wife liked his muscles, he was strong, and his quirk was serviceable for lighting a fire or keeping himself warm. Fighting not so much, but this time wasn't about him. His son was in danger, and he was going to do everything he could to try and save his little boy. When he first registered his quirk as a kid, he called it Dragonfire Breath. Visions of greatness danced through his head like all kids, but that was not to be. Today, though, when the door opened, fueled by adrenaline, fear for his son, and the will to live, he would live up to that name. So, if he failed, he could hold his head high when his wife and son meet him in the afterlife. Hopefully, many years later. Rosho he walked over to the vault and typed in the code. His weapon was ready. He didn't know what part of the vault the future dead person was. He didn't know if he was in the ante-chamber or the actual vault, not that it mattered. What was one scientist going to do to him? They probably had some measly quirk that couldn't have done any real damage. When the door opened, the last thing that ran through Rosho's mind was, what is that green light? Hisashi, if the man coming to kill him screamed, Hisashi didn't hear it over the roar of the fire pouring from him, but without a doubt, the man was dead. What fell to the ground were the metal plates of his body armor. As they hit the ground, they splattered in a molten mess. He stumbled forward, holding his throat. It hurt, but he couldn't stop. He ran over to the computer, could log in, and sent the distress signal to the Japanese Defense Force and General Thunderbolt. Samuel sat in the back of an SUV as the convoy moved out the side mirror as the door to the loading dock was thrown open, and out burst Hisashi. "Son of a bitch!" He bellowed as he watched the man run off to the side where he knew there was a maintenance truck. "Now we have to kill him and the damn kid. How the fuck did he get out?" "Radio!" he yelled to the man in the passenger seat. "Samson, the good doctor is loose. See to him and kill the kid." "With pleasure," the voice rang back. Samuel sat back as he heard, "Delilah, kill the kid." "Yes sir," a woman's voice answered. "I need to remember to send flowers to their funeral," Samuel thought. Delilah, she removed her helmet and ran her fingers through her purple and indigo hair. When she reached the long strand's end, the kid noticed she had twirled it around her finger. Once it was nice and tight, she ripped it. It morphed into a bullet as she walked back toward the kid. "Listen, Izuku, it will get loud. I need you to close your eyes and cover your ears for me, okay?" She couldn't help but smile as the kid nodded his head, shut his eyes tight, and covered his ears. "Overwatch, I need that backup ASAP. My cover has been compromised." Her tone was not one of panic but very matter-of-factual. She walked to the back of the truck and knelt as her arm morphed into a rifle. She chambered the round of ammunition she had just made. The driver of the trailing vehicle's eyes widened as he saw the weapon being aimed at him, and that was the last thing he saw. Lady Nagant didn't miss at this range. With the first shot of fire, all hell began to break loose on the transport. The lead truck suddenly saw a woman step out onto the road. She was tall, 6'3", and with a very waifish appearance. Her long blue hair hung matted down past her knees, and her eyes were a dull blue, a nearly lifeless look on her face. She wore tight-fitting blue jeans and a bulky beige turtleneck sweater. A cigarette hung from her mouth as the lead SUV increased speed. She sighed, taking a long drag off her cigarette. She extended her hand lackadaisically towards the vehicle, palm out. When the vehicle impacted, it suddenly and violently stopped at her hand, and the passengers were violently ejected past her onto the road. The vehicle had just come to a stop. The woman turned, the smoke exhaling from her lungs as they rocketed towards them. Samuels's driver could swerve past the woman as they speed away. "Don't stop, we have a generator and 2 storage tanks, fuck the rest, that is enough to start." "But sir," the passenger protested. Samuel rolled his eyes, pulled his gun, placed it at the base of the man's neck, and pulled the trigger. The man's throat exploded outward in a bloody mess. The sound was deafening in the confined space. "Damn, that was loud, holy shit, now don't stop." Izuku, the truck carrying Izuku, violently jerked to the side and then back, jostling him about. Thankfully, he was secured in his seat. He opened his eyes, and the side of the transport truck crashed inward as a well-built man about 5 feet 9 came barreling into the truck, causing it to lurch to the side again, sending the nice lady toppling to the side as she spun and bringing her weapon to bear. The man was wearing black military clothes like everyone else, but unlike them, his face was uncovered. The sides of his face were covered in jagged scars, and there was one over his right eye. That eye was a milky white, while his other was normal. The scar over his eye started at his chin and ran up his face diagonally, crossing over his eye and wrapping over his head. Lady Nagant fired as the scars on the man's face burst open, and metal shards came flying out, deflecting her shot, which ricocheted around the inside of the truck. "Jesus, they keep getting younger," the man spat out as the shards flew around the room and flew at the hero. She dodged to the side, and another shot rang out. This time, the man was hit square in the chest. His eye rolled back into his head, Izuku shut his tight, and Lady Nagant cautiously approached the downed opponent. The scar on the man's face exploded out as more metal came flying towards her. She dived to the side as they ripped up and out of the truck. She saw the man kip up, his face a crimson mask, a bloody snarl as he launched his attack at her. Nagant got her arm up to block the first hit, and her arm morphed back into an arm from a gun. Her kicking his arm back met his second attack, and then she landed a spinning backhand that sent him sprawling. He laughed as he dived for cover, and the metal shards flew past her. She managed to dodge most of them but not all, as several cuts opened on her left side. She drew a sidearm and was about to fire, barely missing the man's head. She heard him growl as the shards were sent flying at her again. She was about to dodge when she saw some flying toward a helpless little boy strapped to a seat, his eyes shut as tight as possible. Gritting her teeth, she dived and covered the boy as her body armor absorbed some of the blows. She turned and fired again, this time striking her opponent in the shoulder and chest. She had hoped to strike his heart. Even then, she wasn't sure that would kill him. As he fell back, the scar across his face exploded as more metal fragments fired out, up and through the roof. She watched as they came flying around down towards the truck. She ripped out a piece of hair as her arm transformed back into a rifle. He was glaring at her as all the pieces of shrapnel were descending on her and the boy. She was as calm as she pulled the trigger. She didn't miss as the man's head painted the scenery behind him. The shrapnel warbled. She covered the boy the best she could as the metal fragment tore through the top and bottom of the truck. It jerked to the left and then back but stood on the road. She didn't scream as a piece tore straight through her calf. Something large and heavy landed on the back of the truck. She turned around, and for the first time in her life, she thought she was hallucinating. Standing there was what could only be described as a homunculus. This grotesquely stitched together monstrosity had a bipedal shape. A putrid and rotting smell filled the back of the truck as 2 more slithered out of these black ink puddles. From the outside, she heard the most blood-curdling screams as she felt something crash into the front of the truck, and the vehicle began to swerve back and forth. "Izuku, I need you to unbuckle. We must get away right now." She didn't look back as she heard him begin to move. The giant creature went to come forward when an elastic arm snatched it, and one of the smaller ones around the waist yanked them out and sent them tumbling. "Nagant, get the hell out of there," a familiar voice yelled over her comms. "Working on it, morph," she responded as the remaining one dodged the grab and raced towards her. She met it halfway as she slid under its disgusting gnarled arm with razors sticking out of it. She took its legs out, sending it crashing face first. She pulled her sidearm again and put 2 rounds in the back of the thing's head. She saw a swarm of these things overtaking the other vehicles, driving them off the road in a fiery wreck. The disturbing part was she saw the soldiers being yanked from the vehicles and tossed into the sky. She looked, and above them was a towering man over 7 feet tall with a muscular build to rival All Might. Dressed in an exquisite black with a silver pinstripe suit, his white hair fluttered in the wind as his red eyes drifted over the chaos below. "Smoke, we need evac now." "Silence. Smoke. He is dead," the waifish woman responded. "That man killed him, Nagant." "Momentum. Get out now. Secondary protocol is in effect," Momentum responded. Nagant spun to see Izuku getting unbuckled. She screamed his name, reaching out her hand, as out of the corner of her eye, she saw 2 of the creatures come slithering out and tackle her out the back of the truck. She watched in horror as the little boy registered what happened. His whole body lurched as the truck came to a sudden stop. She saw Momentum standing at the front as it flipped into the air. Morph yanked her free of the creatures and back into the tree line. She saw the detonator in his hand. She screamed desperately as he pushed the button. The area went silent as the explosion ripped through it. They tumbled to the ground. Samuel saw the truck explode into the air and ducked down in the seat. The second explosion sent them flying as the first explosion rocked the SUV. Hasashi was racing after the convoy when everything went wild, the homunculus dropping out of the sky. Another group was attacking the soldiers. He thought he was going to catch up when something landed on the front of the little pickup, driving the engine out of the machine and causing it to come to a sudden and violent stop. He thanked the airbag, the protective foam, and the seatbelt. He felt himself yanked free and thrown across the road. He tumbled, his vision blurred, and he saw one of the soldiers walking towards him. "Where is Rosho? Don't tell me you killed him. If he is alive, then I may break your legs," the man bellowed. Hisashi sat up, spitting out some blood. "If you mean that pathetic piece of shit you left behind to kill me, you can pick him up. You may need a dust buster." "You killed my little brother," the man bellowed. "I will break you." The man ran at Hisashi, his arms turning into scythes as he charged. Hisashi waited for him to strike blindly at the last second. He rolled out of the way and stumbled to his feet. He primed his quirk as the man attacked blindly again. Hisashi threw his jacket at the man, which he cut in 2. A wild swing caught the edge of Hisashi's gut, slicing his shirt and leaving a stinging, shallow cut on his abdomen. Hisashi slipped to the left, ducked quickly, and spun to his right as he was clipped on the arm. He turned and was kicked in the gut, sending him sprawling. He narrowly rolled out of the way of a killing swipe. He barely made it to his knees as the man charged once again. Hisashi took a deep breath and let loose his fire. It melted the pavement and fried off the man's legs below the knee. Hisashi turned his head from the gruesome sight as the man's face came in contact with the melted asphalt. He got to his feet and started to run after the convoy in desperation. He saw the truck take flight and explode. He stumbled but kept running, and then he saw it. The truck was in the air when it exploded. As it flipped up, he saw the energy containers for the gamma. He saw the container breaking open and the blackish-green light as they started to explode. The explosion threw him back. He thought he was dead for sure, seeing all that gamma about to flood everywhere. He dived off the road into a ditch, hoping for some cover. He could see the light expand, but suddenly, it all contracted again, and everything exploded around him for the 3rd time. Everything went silent. Nagant thought she had gone deaf. Everything around her was silence. She rolled free from Morph and scrambled back towards the road. She screamed for the boy. All for One shook his head. The explosion had to fiend him. He paused, activating his healing quirks. When the sound didn't return, he was puzzled. Samuel was trapped in the crumpled SUV, his mind fading in and out. He didn't know the vehicle was slowly being filled with gamma radiation. The last thing he heard before he lost consciousness was what could only be described as a roar. The monster, it was silent all over the area, and then something called out, screamed, and roared. It could have been a dragon's roar. Maybe if they were in the olden times or a fantasy world, it would have been believed as so. But what it did do was strike fear into all that heard it that day. All the homunculi looked up to their master, and with a wave of his hand, they all raced towards the sound. All for One stood there trying to understand what had just happened. Was there an unknown beast somewhere, or had his forces overlooked something? Nagant returned to the road. Frantically, she looked for some sign of the little boy. The wreckage around her gave her little hope, but quirks were strange. Maybe he had a quirk that would have saved him. She pleaded with anyone who may have been listening for him to have a quirk that would have kept him. Hisashi opened his eyes at the roar. He was alive. He stumbled to the road and ran towards the convoy to find his son. He needed to find him. All for One saw the signs of his homunculi engaging in battle, his monsters doing his bidding. Then he saw them flying out from the trees as the sounds of some battle intensified. He saw pieces of them being tossed this way and that. Their black and blood painted the very forest, the sounds of their destruction reverberating back to him. Nagant froze at the sounds of death from inside the forest. She saw one of the large homunculi come barreling out of the forest. It had not been sent of its own free will, and its head was missing. It lay on the road, its black blood spurting out. All for One was curious, and he floated down to the ground. His homunculi were not unbeatable. They were simple mindless brutes, but he had sent over 20 of them into the woods. The ground shook some as something emerged from the tree line. Nagant had locked and loaded and was about to fire on the floating man when that homunculi came barreling out of the forest, missing its head. She watched as the mystery man looked down at the thing and looked curious. Then she saw something move at the tree line. Hasashi came down the road, seeing the wreckage of the lifeless bodies, the woman with an arm for a rifle and the man in the suit. Their focus was on the tree line. He looked desperately for any sign of his son. She outstepped a behemoth about 8 feet tall, green-skinned, muscular to an obscene level with an almost ape-like physique. It stomped forward towards All for One, who grinned at the monster. "Now, where did you come from, my green friend, and what quirk do you have for me? The army I could create?" He stared at the monster as he walked forward. The beast was slightly taller than him, surprisingly broader than him. "Now, come give me your secrets." The monster stepped forward and backhanded the man in the suit, sending him stumbling back. The man showed fear. That shouldn't be possible. Before he could say anything else, the monster came at him again. This time, he dodged past the clumsy attack. He sneered and delivered a punch that sent shockwaves reverberating around them. All for One's eyes widened when the monster grabbed him by the head and began to slam him back and forth on the pavement. He grabbed the hand not for release, activating his quirk. He was ready to take the power of this monster, but he couldn't touch it. His shock caused him to falter. Partially embedded in the ground, the monster began to stomp on him like a bug, and blood flew from the villain's mouth. Activating all the strength quirks, he caught the monster's foot but was losing the test of strength. Inconceivable. He managed to roll the creature's foot to the side. He went to float up only to be snatched by the throat. He tried to speak, but the thing roared in his face. Its giant fist reared back and punched the villain into the forest, leaving a path of devastation behind. All for One came to a rest in a crater. He was severely injured and incredibly mad, and he struggled to his feet. He heard the approach of helicopters, not wanting to be seen. He grit his teeth and was swallowed by a black ooze, a silent vow of revenge on his lips. Nagant saw the monster turn towards her, a sneer on its face. As it went to move towards her, she aimed, but she saw it pause. It looked at her like it knew her. She saw its stance soften. She lowered her arm and began to approach, her other hand extended to touch the monster. General Thunderbolt. As they came over the horizon, they saw this green monster covered in some black liquid heading towards what appeared to be some soldier. He was about to give the command to open fire on both when the radio call came in of friendlies in the area, HSC agents. He growled as he mashed down on his cigar. Today had already been bad. Now, add HSC agents to his base. He was not happy. They had almost been knocked out of the air by the explosion a little earlier. He shook his head. At least it was Hero Safety Commission and not some regular spandex-wearing high school graduates with no real training. He threw open the door to the chopper and stepped out, giving the command to only fire on his signal. A lightning bolt boomed in his hand as he used it to slide down to the ground safely. The woman turned and looked at him, recognizing that the beast snarled at him. "Name," he ordered of the woman. "Lady Nagant of the HSC, sir," she responded, still watching the monster. "We will discuss what you are doing on my base later. Is this thing one of yours?" He looked over the monster. It seemed barely intelligent. "No, sir, it just showed up. There was a villain attack. They had some homunculi with them, and this thing beat them all, sir, and their controller. Some guy in a suit with white hair and red eyes." The general raised an eyebrow at the description. "You monster," he pointed at the beast, "surrender peacefully, or I will have to take you down." He pointed at the giant green monster, a lightning bolt forming in his hand. "Now get on your knees." The monster immediately began to feel uneasy when this loud man showed up. Then, it was pointing at him and saying things. The monster wanted nothing to do with this. It just wanted some peace. It snorted at the loud man and turned away. "I said on your knees," Thunderbolt thundered. "General, no." Nagant tried to warn him, but she was too late. The lightning bolt released from the hold the general had on it and crashed into the back of the monster, who turned around, its face contorting from annoyance to rage. The general's eyes widened slightly. He bit down on his cigar. "Tough son of a bitch, aren't you?" The green monster roared as the general raised his hand to the sky. It immediately darkened as 5 thunderbolts came crashing down onto the monster. Thunderbolt sneered. The stupid beast just needed to be brought to heel. He smirked as the thing he thought cried out in pain. Nagant was forced to jump back for his safety. Hisashi came running up as the lightning struck the monster, and then he and Nagant heard the roar again. "It is coming from the monster." Thunderbolt thought the beast would drop to its knees, but instead, it stomped the ground, causing it to shake, throwing the general off balance, and making the attack falter. It then roared in rage at the loud man. The general raised both hands to strike again but didn't get a chance as the monster backhanded him away, sending him crashing through trees in the forest. The gunship opened fire. Nagant watched as the bullets just thudded against the monster. It raised its hand to block its face some, its massive legs tensed, and it suddenly leapt at the gunship. They tried to move out of the way, but it smashed through their tail, sending it spiraling towards the ground. Nagant saw 8 more gunships coming into range and opening fire where the monster had landed in the forest. Hasashi just put it out of his mind and ran forward, screaming for Izuku. The purple-haired woman turned at his voice. "Dr. Midoriya, we have to get you out here," she said as she ran towards him. "I can't, my son," he protested. Hope, however faint, sprang forward in her heart. "What kind of quirk does your son have?" "A collection quirk it absorbs, we have no idea, is very weak." "Why?" he asked quickly. "Dr. Midoriya, your son is dead. He was in the back of the truck that blew up." The words were bitter in Nagant's mouth and burned like acid when she spoke them. Her heart ached as the hope died. Hisashi stared at her in disbelief. The truck that exploded, the gamma explosion, Izuku was in that. "No," he muttered. He looked around and screamed for his son, tears streaking down his face. He just screamed and screamed. Nagant lifted him to his feet as her heart broke at the sheer pain in the man's voice, at the little voice that had responded to her, plus ultra. Morph came running out to help her with the broken man as momentum came up in a car. Over the tree line, they saw the monster springing out of the forest, swatting the gunships out of the air. Nagant paused when the thing took a whole missile barrage, but that roar told her it was still moving. A tree flew out of the forest like a spear, and the helicopter went down. They forced Hasashi into the car as he clawed to get past them, calling for his son, begging for him. As the door closed, the last helicopter crashed to the ground, and the monster's roar was almost like a response to the poor doctor's desperate plea. As they sped to safety, Nagant saw the monster come leaping out of the trees. She marveled at how far it flew away. 2 leaps, and it was already out of sight. They hadn't gotten far when they encountered the Japanese Defense Force or the JDF. They were stopped. They quickly showed their identification and relayed what had happened to the downed gunships, the general, and the monster. They were told to move out of the area and that the doctor would be left to them for now. The JDF moved in to secure the area. Hisashi was just curled into a ball on the back seat, rocking back and forth, whispering his son's name like a prayer, if he said it enough. Izuku awoke shivering. He immediately sat up and looked around. He was in a cave. He didn't remember much, only seeing the purple-haired hero getting yanked out of the truck. Everything else was hard to remember. He was scared and angry. He thought he saw the hero again but through a thick haze. He wasn't sure. Then, just loud and furious was the only thing running through his head. He looked around and had no clothes on except his All Might underwear. He didn't know how he got there or where he was. Like all 4-year-olds, he began to cry, calling for his mommy and daddy. He didn't know how long he cried, but soon, he had to go to the bathroom. Reluctantly, he made his way out of the cave. There were trees all around, but the forest was strangely quiet. A morning fog had not lifted yet, adding to the place's mystique. He went behind a tree and relieved himself, looking this way and that. He didn't know what to do. He was cold, wet, and hungry. He couldn't survive. He didn't know how to hunt or what to eat or anything. He went fishing once with his dad and grandfather, but they just gave him a fishing pole to hold. All he could remember was that he could not get lost by walking in a straight line. He looked at the rising sun, bit his lip, and started to walk as carefully as he could. After stepping on some sharp rocks and scraping himself on some bushes, it overwhelmed him again, and he started crying. As his crying calmed, he heard a voice. "You see, Mother, the forest is haunted." As the book said, you could hear the crying of the lost souls in the morning fog. A little girl's voice rang out. "That is most certainly an odd phenomenon. I wonder if a quirk is involved," a woman's voice responded. That is very interesting. Perhaps we should return to the campsite and maybe explore more when there isn't much fog or something," a man said. "But father, we have heard the crying. We must see if we can find the source. We may even see a ghost." "Is that not great?" the little girl said. "I must agree with her, darling. Imagine if we could prove the existence of the spirit world. I would be most interesting," the mother said. Izuku's voice was raw from his crying. He called out weakly, "Help! Help me! Mother, it is trying to lure us closer. We must be on guard," the little girl said. We can come back later," the man said with a hint of panic. "Piss posh Shinobu, this is a chance of a lifetime," the woman said, her voice still and calm. "Yes, father, just think of the opportunity," the little girl's voice rang out, calm like the mother but with a tinge of excitement to it. "Emiko, Reiko," Shinobu pleaded. Izuku got to his feet and began to stumble toward the voices coming to him out of the fog. "Help!" he cried, the tears coming to him again. "Is it getting closer?" Shinobu said, his voice wavering. "Yes, let us help your lost spirit come to us," Reiko called. "Yes, reveal thyself to us so we may help you find peace," Emiko said. "Help, please help me." Izuku desperately tried to head to the voices crashing through the underbrush like an animal. The sounds of something coming towards them terrified Shinobu. To his dismay, it seemed to delight his wife and daughter. Reiko was the image of her mother with pale gray hair and blue eyes, who spoke in a similar restrained tone and shared a love of all things spooky and mysterious. That was how he found himself on a camping trip for Golden Week. The two most influential women in his life had seen a program about the legends of the forest surrounding Mount Yakayama, and he mentioned camping. Now, a ghost was crashing through the forest to drag them to who knows where. But Reiko and Emiko were excited, cameras at the ready. He took a deep breath and stepped in front of his girls. His quirk of levitation would allow him to float, but it was unsuitable for fighting. But he was the man gulp, and he had to do something. Emiko did notice her husband taking a defensive position in front of them. It was one of the most attractive things she had seen him do recently. She would have to reward him for his bravery. It was getting closer to the sounds of the forest and the crying for help. The girls eagerly answered, drawing it closer, when suddenly something came crashing out just feet before them. Shinobu yelled and leapt on the ghost. He was on the shorter side, being 5'5", and his wife stood a solid 6 feet, making them an odd pairing. He was a little heavy, but she preferred him that way, and he loved her so much he couldn't say no. But today, he would be a lion and go down in history as the man who wrestled a nearly naked dirty young boy to the ground who was crying. Quickly, Shinobu scrambled to his feet, but the ghost was quick and latched onto his leg. Please help," it rasped. Shinobu tried to shake the boy free, but it did not avail. Izuku was scared and desperate. This was his 8 seconds. Emiko ran forward to stabilize her husband before he toppled over. Reiko froze as her mind processed what was unveiled before her. She reached out with her quirk, got a hold of the little boy, and pulled him away towards her. Izuku shrieked in terror at what he thought was his chance for salvation being taken away from him. When 2 slender arms touched his cheeks, their eyes locked, and her beautiful blue eyes bored deep into his soul. "It will be okay. Though you are not a ghost, we will see you are safe." He froze. Part of him wanted to cry and scream, but something deep inside wanted to rage and scream. Reiko saw myriad emotions she didn't understand run through her ghost's eyes. In the end, she saw something in his eyes. As that emotion, his eyes glowed with an emerald fire, she pulled his dirty face closer. "It is okay," she reiterated. "I promise my ghost, it will be okay." Her father was about to run in, but his wife stopped him. holding him back. They watched as the boy's whole body was tense. Slowly, his muscles relaxed, and they watched him collapse into their daughter's arms. They could hear him crying as he clung to her. It took them several moments to calm him down, and they learned his name and that he was Mustafa. They asked him what day it was, and when he said Friday before Golden Week, her parents looked at each other. "Izuku, have you been out here for a month?" Emiko asked. "I just woke up in a cave today," he said, taking a drink of offered water. "We need to get you down the mountain. We have no phone service here. Your mom is going to want to hear your voice," Shinobu said. Izuku Midoriya. For the past month, life had been hell. They had told her that her baby boy was dead. Everything that had happened to her baby. He had died when the truck exploded, but she didn't believe them. Something told her that he wasn't, that he was out there and she needed to find him. She would walk outside in the middle of the night and start walking, turning this way and that. Just wandering where her heart pulled her. She had been missing for a week until a woman with purple hair found her. Her name was Lady Nagant. She would come over and keep Izuku company and even go with her on the walks. Izuku pulled the information of the young woman. She was the last person to see her baby alive. She could feel the guilt, the remorse pouring off of the girl Kana. Every night, Izuku would look for Izuku, and soon, Kiana would be there waiting. Hisashi was in shock. He was in the hospital, being treated for his throat. He had suffered severe damage and would forever have a rasp to his voice, but he didn't care. His baby boy was gone. He joined Izuku on her walks when he got home. He recognized Kiana from the fight. He just nodded in her direction. They kept telling them to have a funeral, that it would help bring closure. When the house phone rang, Izuku almost didn't answer. When she did, her scream echoed throughout the house. Kiana and Hasashi came running in to find her crying on the floor. "He's alive! He's alive!" She held the phone tight. As they got closer, they heard a voice they had only heard in their dreams, nightmares. "Mommy. I am okay. I want to come home." Izuku and Hasashi had never been on a longer plane ride or drive than they were now. After the phone call from their believed to be dead son, they were in no position to talk. Thanks to her training, Kana immediately got on the phone and asked Izuku what color her hair was. When he answered correctly, she asked where he was. He passed the phone to Mr. Shinobu Yanagi, who sounded nervous as he explained they found Izuku while camping on Mount Yakayama. He was found hungry, dirty, and in his underwear. They immediately took him back to camp, fed him, got him something to wear, and came down the mountain, where they got cell service and called the phone number he told them. "You did a wonderful job, Mr. Yanagi. I need you to take him to the nearest ranger station. He has been missing for over a month. My name is Kana. It may be hard, but please do your best to keep him calm so he doesn't go into shock. I am departing with his parents now. Notify me what ranger station you are at. Tell them to call their supervisor and give the code HRTNG0056. She heard the man repeat the code and someone else writing it down. They read it back and then he reread it to confirm. "Very good, Mr. Yanagi. Since I know this is your cell phone, I am going to send you message with my number. You call it immediately, if anything happens or if you have any troubles. Do you understand me?" "Why, yes, ma'am," he replied. The line disconnected. The Yanagis loaded the car and did as they were asked. Once they reached the ranger station, the parents went inside to talk to the ranger, while Izuku, who was wrapped in a blanket, sat in the back huddled next to Riko. The girl's even tone and gentle nature seemed to help in keeping him calm. He was much better after hearing his mom's voice, but he was still freaked out about where he was, what had happened and how he couldn't remember anything. It had been one whole month that he couldn't remember. The ranger was concerned, but not to the level that the Yanagis believed he should be. Once he finally did call his supervisor and gave the code, they watched the almost dismissive look on his face fade, till the man was as white as a ghost. His hands were trembling when he asked where the boy was. "Is he dangerous?" Emiko asked, wondering what caused such a change in the man's demeanor. "I don't believe so, ma'am, but he is a high-value target, being looked for by the HSC, the JDF, and the National Police," the ranger gulped. "We read about this thing in training, but I never. The boy is frightened and afraid. If you don't calm down, you are going to make this even worse," Emiko said sternly. "Shinobu?" Her husband just nodded. "I am going to get him out of the car, and we will stay with him until his parents arrive. You must keep calm and ensure whoever shows up is also calm. If the poor boy has been missing for a month, Who knows what horrors he has had to endure that his mind has blocked them out. The ranger nodded. Military Base Epsilon General Thunderbolt was sitting in his hospital bed, the presence of his granddaughter Yui somewhat alleviating his typically sour disposition. She was quiet and didn't feel the need to talk about nonsense, a fact that worried her parents but made her just right. As he was still recovering from the giant green ape, he had been in an increasingly sour mood, especially with the loss of a whole airborne division. Thankfully, none of the people under his command had died, but then, somehow, this huge brute had managed to escape and disappear. Lack of progress when he gave an order was an excellent way to get his dander up. He had put off his daughter coming to visit as long as he could till, in the midst of trying to stall them once again, Yui got on the phone. "Grandpa, I am coming to see you." The older man chuckled. It was not a request, not a question. She was giving him a statement. His daughter had come in and fussed over him. Thankfully, her husband was a good man who just asked some basic questions before letting the girls do their thing. Yui asked if he was going to get better and if he was going to catch whoever put him in the hospital. When he answered yes to both, the little girl smiled, climbed into the bed beside him, pulled out her book, and sat quietly reading to herself. He loved his family, though his daughter did fuss a lot more than he liked. His granddaughter would make a fine military general one day. When she showed him her quirk, he lit up like a Christmas tree. This girl could carry a whole armored division in her pocket now as long as she didn't do something silly like become one of those costumed heroes running around like a chicken without its head half the time. His little Yui had fallen asleep, and her parents had gone to get food when one of his aides came. She was a level-headed woman most of the time, but she seemed to melt whenever a child was around. She regained her senses once she got it out of her system quietly, and the general threatened to demote her and send her to the naval division. "Sir, the Midoriya boy has been found." The boy that was believed to be dead when the truck exploded carrying all the gamma items, his bushy mustache twitched. "We need to know where he has been, what happened, and how he survived." According to his file, he had some minor collection quirk. His aide nodded. "Nothing that would account for his survival. Who do we have in the area?" "Lieutenant Talbot, sir." "Good, good." He smiled. "Get him on the horn, and have him go pick up the boy so we can get some answers before that damn hero commission get their hands on him." "Yes, sir." She snapped a crisp salute and exited the room. Ranger Station MY-254 Soga Kame was by nature a quiet person. They loved nature, and they enjoyed their job as, for the most part, it was quiet. Today was not one of those days when Unagi had walked into his station. He was expecting the usual tourist, camper information, not that they had found some child on the mountain. When he called his supervisor at their insistence, he was not ready for the reaction his supervisor gave or the way his computer suddenly lit up with alerts going out all across the network. The Unagis brought the boy into the station. He was dirty and very nervous. The Unagi's daughter held his hand and kept talking to him. Mr. Unagi helped the boy to the restroom and shower to get cleaned up. Mrs. Unagi rustled up some clothes from the lost and found, while Ranger Kame was able to provide an oversized t-shirt, but at least it was clean. He looked much better as he sat with the little girl, nibbling on a protein bar while they looked at something on her phone. It was this way till a few other rangers showed up. They were worried that there was someone else lost on the mountain or a possible kidnapper on the loose. As they tried to get some answers from Izuku, all they did was succeed in making him cry from their harsh tones. Mrs. Unagi stepped in and acted as a mediator. All he could tell them was that he was in a truck, the hero lady had been yanked out, and then he was in the cave. They tried to press for answers but got tears and a reprimand from Mrs. Unagi. As more rangers showed up, even a few local heroes specialized in forest search and rescue. Thankfully, the heroes were much better equipped to handle things. A woman with brown hair and amber eyes came into the station and immediately took control. She introduced herself to the parents and the children. Her name was Terra. Her quirk had to do with earth manipulation, but she also came with new clothes and some sweets. The kind woman even had some underwear. She squatted with Izuku and gently asked him some questions with a patient smile, taking all his answers. She then turned to Unagi and the ranger and went over where their campsite was and where they encountered Izuku. She listened to Izuku talk about the cave and then approached the son. She smiled, thanked him and Reiko for being so helpful, and quickly exited. She called people together, and they left, taking some of the chaos with them. Chaos, the heroes and other rangers had just left when a military vehicle pulled up with a few other cars in tow. The sound of helicopters could be heard coming closer. The first vehicle, a jeep, the man who appeared to be in charge stepped out, issued some orders, and came barging into the ranger station. "I am Lieutenant Talbot, and I am in charge as of now," his voice boomed throughout the station. "Are you the ranger in charge of this installation?" Ranger Kame stepped forward. "Yes, sir, I was the one that called this in. A search party has already been dispatched to see if they could locate the area the boy awoke in." "Good, give that information to Sergeant Bantham outside." "Where is the boy?" the lieutenant asked, but he was already staring at him. When the ranger confirmed Izuku's identity, the lieutenant nodded and walked right over to the children, only to be intercepted by Emiko, who got in his way. Shinobu went to a corner and called Kana. After some brief introductions, he tried to step past Emiko, but she calmly got in his way. "Sir, as of right now, until this young man's family arrives, I am his guardian. I will not hand him over to you just because you state your name and rank as if that gives you a free pass." Lieutenant Talbot glared at the woman behind his mirrored sunglasses. "Mrs. Yanagi. Mrs. Yanagi, I am under strict orders to take this boy into custody for questioning simply," he replied, his voice falsely sweet. "That is all. He has been missing for a month, and we need to know if he has any answers in regards to a confidential matter. If you would be so kind as to step aside." He moved to the right. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face when she slid in front of him. "Lieutenant, I am afraid I can allow no such thing to occur," she said calmly. "It would be a violation of his rights and those of his parents to allow you to question him without one of them present. If you were to confer with the ranger, you find out that the boy does not remember anything of the past month. He remembers being in the truck, then awakening in a cave." "Well, that seems convenient," he said. "Are you a lawyer of some sort, ma'am?" "Why, yes, I am a civil rights lawyer." Emiko smiled as she handed over her business card. "So you can understand that I will defend this child's rights with any means at my disposal until such time his parents come to relieve me of my duties and take their son back into their custody." Talbot sighed. He hated lawyers almost as much as he hated people impeding him from doing his job. He removed his sunglasses and activated his quirk command. "Step aside and be quiet." Emiko stiffened and did as ordered. Shinobu, relaying information, immediately came to his wife's defense. "Be still and be quiet." The children started to panic as they saw the two adults standing completely still. Reiko called for her mother and father, and when they did not respond, she glared at the man. "What have you done with them?" Reiko stood in front of Izuku with her arms spread. "You will not take Izuku." Talbot sighed. "Little girl, that boy is coming with me." He stepped forward and shoved Reiko to the side, sending her toppling over. She cried out in pain. Izuku tried to move to her side but was grabbed roughly by the arm. "You are not going anywhere," Talbot growled as he hated children. Izuku called out that Talbot was hurting him. Reiko tried to pull Izuku to her with her quirk, snatching him right out of Talbot's grasp. When she grabbed onto him, he returned the gesture. Frantically, they clung to each other as the adult tried to tear them apart. His hand slipped, and he ended up striking Reiko, who started to cry, but it succeeded in breaking the grip. He yanked Izuku behind him. "Stupid child," he muttered to the crying Reiko. "You hurt her," Talbot heard Izuku stammer. "You hurt Reiko." Suddenly, the boy seemed to burst from his grip, and when he screamed the second time, it was guttural, louder. Talbot whirled around and saw the boy increasing in size, his skin turning green. He wasn't sure if it was a roar or a scream of pain coming from this thing that was the scared little boy. The roar of the beast alerted the soldiers outside that something was amiss. The door flung open as the ranger and the sergeant he had been speaking with came flanked by two soldiers. The military men immediately drew their weapons. Talbot activated his quirk one more time. "Stop," he bellowed. He saw the green monster, hesitating but not stopping. It turned to him, its massive hand grabbing him around the waist. Shots rang out from one of the soldiers. The sergeant ordered them to cease fire, and Reiko screamed in terror. The green monster threw Tablot into his men as Ranger Kame dived for cover. The beast roared, drowning out all the other sounds. Reiko covered her ears, and she felt herself being lifted. She looked, and the monster had raised her from the ground, holding her protectively to its chest. The Yanagis could suddenly move again. As Emiko yelled and tried to float her daughter out of the monster's grasp, The thing growled and broke through the back of the station, taking off into the forest with Reiko. She tried to push the beast away, but it did nothing. She tried to pull herself free. She felt the thing's hands tense, but again, she went nowhere. It took her a moment to realize that despite the fact they were tearing through the trees, the thing had her almost cocooned, holding her so protectively. She felt the thing leap into the air. She let out a shriek at the suddenness of it. As the momentary feeling of weightlessness peaked, followed by the sudden sensation of falling, it made her scream again. As they landed, she felt the vibration of the impact, but she was not jostled in the slightest. Besides, she thought of them taking flight. She didn't scream this time when they landed. She suddenly heard yelling and screams, the sounds of cars and horns. She turned twisted and was able to catch a glimpse. They were standing in the middle of a highway. Lady Nagant, they were speeding along the highway when suddenly, a loud commotion and tires were squealing as everyone slammed onto their brakes simultaneously. Kana swerved to the side, getting them out of the chaos. She managed to safely bring them to a stop. "What is going on?" Hisashi said from the back seat where he was with Inko. "Are both of you all right?" "I'm okay," Inko responded, looking around. Kana got out of the car quickly, and that was when they heard it. Kana and Hasashi had heard it before the monster's roar. "Stay with Inko," she yelled as she took off running up the side of the highway. She pulled her radio. "Overwatch, this is Nagant. I need backup. That green hulking monster from the base is back." As she ran further up, she saw the thing, took its foot, and shoved an 18-wheeler to the side, roaring and swiping at the cars that tried to get too close. She immediately noticed it was carrying something. As it turned and lifted, she saw it cradling a young girl. "Overwatch, we have a hostage situation. The monster has a girl. Be advised, Overwatch, we have a hostage situation." Nagant knew she needed to get this off the highway, to get them somewhere else, but how? She ran forward, creating a bullet. She climbed up on top of a van, her arm morphing into a rifle. She aimed and fired. The shot was wide, intentionally, but the sound made the creature stop and focus on her. She saw it snarl, and then that same look of what Nagant swore was recognition. She slid out of the van and started to walk forward, creating another bullet and loading it just in case. "Hey, big guy," Nagant said as she walked forward, "what do you say we put the girl down?" She saw the monster's arms tighten around the girl more as it growled at her. "Izuku, we can't stay in the middle of the freeway," she heard the little girl shout. Nagant froze. "Izuku? No, don't jump over there, take me over there," the girl called out. She saw the girl's little hand pointing off the highway towards the trees. "Please, the freeway scares me. I am scared." She saw the beast grunt and glare at Nagant and the drivers. It started walking towards the trees and getting off the highway. Nagant gave chase, running parallel with the creature, her mind racing. They kept moving till they came into a clearing. "You need to put me down now," she heard the girl say. The creature grunted back. "The bad man is gone." "Okay. I am okay." She saw the thing shift, so the girl was kneeling in its massive hands, looking it dead in the face. Nagant began slowly raising her arm but saw the thing's eyes immediately dart to her. Nagant froze, released the bullet, and turned her arm back to normal. "You are telling me that thing is Izuku Midoriya?" Nagant yelled. "Yes." The girl responded. "Hey, big guy," Nagant said again, walking forward, her arms in the air. "Remember me from the truck, go beyond." She saw that look of recognition again. "You need to put me down now," the little girl said. The monster shook its head like a petulant child. "I am safe. See, there is a hero here." She pointed to Nagant. "You said she was the hero who came to save you." The thing again grunted and shook its head. "She came back to save you." "Yeah, I came to save you. I have your parents, your mom and dad." The head jerked up at that statement. "See it okay now," the little girl said. Nagant was shocked at how calm this girl was. She began to think she had an ice quirk or something. "I am safe. You are safe." The thing tried to look away from her, but she put a hand on his cheek and pulled him back to look at her. "You are safe." Now, Nagant watched as this little girl pressed her forehead to this monster and started to whisper that same statement repeatedly. She saw the eyes closed like in a trance, and they began shrinking and getting smaller. The muscles shrunk, and the skin went back to a typical hue. There in the clearing was Izuku Midoriya, cradled by the bravest little girl she had ever seen. The little girl rocked, gently telling Izuku that he was safe. Overwatch. The Hulk is down. The situation has been resolved. I need immediate assistance, she radioed in. She slowly walked forward as Izuku's eyes fluttered open. What happened? He muttered. I don't know, Reiko said, but the hero is here. Izuku looked past her and saw Nagant. He smiled sweetly at her, and his eyes sparkled. For the first time, she felt like a hero. She was this boy's hero. I knew you would save me, he said softly as his eyes closed and he drifted off to sleep. Can you say clusterfuck? Heroes, emergency services, HSC agents, the JDF, and 2 worried parents. Trying to keep Inko away would have been akin to a suicide mission. Hasashi fell to his knees and began to sob when he saw his son. Izuku woke up in his mother's embrace. He smiled at her before he nuzzled in and fell back asleep. Inko just cradled him to her, her tears falling silently. Reiko sat and waited. It wasn't long before her parents arrived. They had a curious look of relief, worry, and anger when they stepped out of the vehicle. Reiko ran towards them, and the group hugged. Inevitably, it became questions of jurisdiction. The monster had attacked military personnel when it first manifested, but Nagant argued that it was provoked. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Reiko's mom talking to Inko, who nodded, and the woman walked over. I am Emiko Yanagi, mother of Reiko and the lawyer for the Midoriya, the woman said, commanding everyone's attention. First, I would like to press charges against Lieutenant Glenn Talbot for illegal use of a quirk, assault, and battery of 2 minors, false imprisonment, and attempted kidnapping. Everyone was frozen. I believe you, Lady Nagant, as a member of the Hero Commission, have the authority to file charges on my families and clients. The Midoriyas would also like to agree to surrender to Lady Nagant and the HSC, as long as Lady Nagant agrees to take my clients in personally. Nagant passed Emiko to Inko, still holding Izuku, and saw Inko mouth the words, I trust you. Nagant turned back to the agency's representatives. Major Brackies, we will be filing charges against Lieutenant Glenn Talbot and taking Izuku Midoriya into custody as this seems to be some quirk reaction. We will reach out if we need any assistance. Nagant said as she turned and walked away. She took a deep breath and exhaled. She felt good coming to the aid of the Midoriyas. I am going to need you and your family to give a full statement, she said to Emiko. I would also like to have your daughter near when he wakes up, as we don't know what triggers his transformation, but that girl was as cool as a cucumber. Of course, Lady Nagant. Reiko has a very strong protective instinct, and she immediately connected with Izuku when we first found him. I believe he transformed because that man had hurt her. He wanted to protect her, Emiko replied. He has been terrified since we found him. I think it is a good idea for now. She has been asking if he is a light this entire time. She is a good girl with a bright future. Let me introduce you to his mother. Please forgive her if she doesn't put him down. People kept telling her that he was dead for the past month. She never believed them. Nagant said as they approached. That is because she is a mother, Emiko said with a smile. The introduction was brief as they were loaded into a van and taken to the HSC facility in the area. Nagant explained that this would only be a temporary placement to the Midoriya and that, due to what she believed to be Izuku's quirk, they would be moving to the main building in Tokyo. What is going to happen to my son? Hisashi said. I don't know, Hisashi, Nagant said honestly. I am hoping and praying that the only reason he didn't have any control is due to the nature of his quirk manifesting and the desperate situation of his first awakening. We must figure it out and get it under control. She saw the worried looks the Midoriya gave each other. This isn't going to be easy. I am sorry, Inko, but this will take time, Nagant told them. I have my baby back, that is what is important, and thank you so much, Emiko, Shinobu, and especially you, Reiko, Inko said. The little girl looked shocked. Kana told me how much you helped my baby. Reiko blushed. He is my friend, and friends help each other. I hope you will continue to be his friend. He will need all the help, all the support we can give him, he said. Murmur of support filled the van. Hisashi placed his arm around Inko. They looked down at their sleeping boy. The road stretched out endlessly before them. It was a long road. They didn't know where it would end. They just knew they would be by their son. They had nearly lost him, and they were not about to let him slip away now. Izuku sat nestled in his mother's arms as the family was transported to the holding facility, where they would stay until the morning. He awoke in a cold and sterile room, still in her arms. She had fallen asleep, but her grip on him had not slipped. Izuku couldn't speak as he stared up at her sleeping form. She had dark circles under her eyes and looked like she had been crying a lot. Izuku sat there, not wanting to move, as he didn't want to wake her. He held out as long as he could till he whispered a single word, "Mama." Inko's eyes opened, and she looked down at him. He watched as her entire face lit up and pulled him so tight. "I knew you were alive," she whispered as the tears began to fall. "They all told me I was wrong, but I knew it. In my heart, I knew you wouldn't leave me." "Mom, what happened?" he said. He was so confused. He woke up in a cave and met the Unagis, then he was in a ranger station, and now he had no idea where he was. "That is a long story, baby," she replied, stroking his hair. "Honestly, I don't know all the answers, but we will find them together." When he began to try and sit up, he could feel her tense for a minute, but she helped him up, keeping her arm around him. He didn't know, but she feared he would disappear like a dream if she didn't hold on to him. "Are the Unagis okay?" he asked. "Yes, they are just fine," Inko replied. "They are out there talking to Kana, the lady in the back of the truck." Izuku didn't know who Kana was, but he knew the lady in the truck. "The lady with the pretty hair." "Yes, the lady with the pretty hair," she responded. "Where are we?" Izuku said, looking around the cold, sterile room. "I don't like it here. Can we go home?" Inko bit her lip. "Not right now, honey, there are things we need to figure out first." "Like what?" "Like, how did you end up on that mountain or in that cave?" she said, rubbing his back. "Oh, that makes sense," he responded, looking down. "Can I see Dad and maybe Reiko? I want to tell her and her parents thank you." "Maybe after they are done," Inko said. Thankfully, they didn't have to wait too long before, in what seemed like magic to Izuku, a wall opened up, and suddenly, there was a door there, and in walked Riko and her parents, followed by his dad and the lady with the nice hair. Inko held her breath when he got free. She let it go when he didn't disappear as he ran to his father and hugged him. Hitachi just scooped Izuku into his arms, a few tears escaping his control as he held his boy tight. "I thought I lost you, boy," he whispered. "We were so worried." "I'm sorry, Dad," he said instinctively. "Why are you sorry?" he asked, pulling back and smiling at his precious son. Izuku opened his mouth a few times and shrugged, "I don't know." This made his father laugh, as well as the Unagis. Izuku blushed and squirmed free. He turned to them and bowed. "Thank you for saving me." "Think nothing of it," Shinobu responded. "We are just glad you are home safe with your family." "Yes, that is the most important thing," Amiko added. Reiko hugged him. "You may not have been evidence of the supernatural, but I am glad to have met you, Izuku." Izuku hugged her back. For some reason, her hug made him feel safe. Once he stepped back, he just hugged Kana, to her surprise. "Thank you," he managed as he began to cry. "I was so scared." Then, suddenly, his breath started to get ragged as the memories came flooding into the truck. The monsters, the villains, everything. He released her leg and stumbled back. It was then that everyone heard it. A low rumbling growl came from the terrified boy, who was holding his chest. Everyone froze as Kana moved the Unagi to the door. Inko activated her quirk and yanked Izuku at her. She could see the terror on his face. But in his eyes, she saw a fire. She watched as they began to glow. "He is scared," Riko called out. "Like at the ranger station." Inko hugged him to her chest, holding him tight. "Mommy is here, baby, mommy is right here. No one is going to hurt you, baby." Inko started rubbing his back and rocking gently. "No one will take you from me again, I promise. Just breathe, Izuku, breathe." Inko could feel his trembling. "I love you, Izuku, I will be with you. I am not going anywhere." There was a low rumble from Izuku. She turned his face to her, and she could still see his eyes glowing. "I am not going anywhere," she said firmly. She watched as the fire in his eyes flickered, and it slowly faded. Reiko walked over and squeezed Izuku's hand. "I will also do my best to help." Izuku smiled. "While you were sleeping." After a small, tense moment when they had to draw blood, they were unsure what triggered Izuku's transformation other than fear. The Unagi family had stayed for a few more hours before leaving and heading home. The parents watched as the two children hugged, with Reiko promising to keep in touch and call him when she could. Izuku had fallen asleep with his head on Inko's lap as Kana had pulled Hasashi out to look at the blood sample. "We don't have anything to compare it to," she said, leaning against the table. "But we are getting an interesting reading from the sample. Does that look familiar?" Hasashi looked at the reading. "That's gamma radiation." He paused and stepped back. "Why didn't the radiation sensors trip?" "That's the thing. We can read the energy they are giving off, but the levels are so small that they pass for natural." Kana pushed off the table. "You said that Izuku's quirk absorbed energy, but it was doing so at such a small amount. Could it be that we were absorbing gamma rays?" "It could be possible. They do occur naturally, but it is a minimal amount, so that would track." Hasashi ran his hand through his hair. "So when the truck exploded, he absorbed all that gamma, it oversaturated his cells and triggered his transformation. Is there any way to test that theory? We can expose him to low-level gamma rays and see if his cells absorb it. We can mimic a naturally occurring source to keep him safe," Hasashi said, leaning over the sample again. "But we don't know what will happen if we expose him to even more. It could trigger another transformation. He went missing for 1 month, and we have no idea where he was or what happened. We are piecing together that, but as we just started," she spread her arms out in exasperation. "The investigation just started, and the military is already starting to breathe down our necks. Mrs. Yanagi is going to head up your civilian complaint against Talbot." "What is going to happen, Kana?" He sighed. "We need to figure out what his transformation is. Can he learn to control it?" Kana placed her hand on his shoulder. "That is our end goal. He has to be able to control it. If not, they are going to try and lock him up and throw away the key or turn into some weapon where they trigger his transformation and drop him on an enemy. That could take years," Hasashi replied. "Yes," she said, squeezing his shoulder. "This is going to be a long road. There will be trials and tribulations, but I swear to you and Inko that I will be with you every step of the way." "Thank you, Kana," he said and embraced her. "I don't know what we would do without you." Kana returned the hug. Since Izuku had disappeared, she had been entwined with the family. She never had a family. She wanted to be a hero, but what she was doing wasn't hero-like. She was chosen for the Hero Commission squad because, like the rest of the team, she had no family and no one who would come looking for her if she disappeared. She had gone to check on Inko after the accident. As Hasashi was in the hospital, it had been out of guilt. She felt guilty for failing to save Izuku. It was because when Izuku looked at her, he saw a hero. She was his hero. The way he looked at her was not something she was familiar with, but it was something she had dreamed about when she was young. The haunted look on Inko's face would have been enough to haunt her for the rest of her life. But it was Inko's resolve when her eyes would show defiance when she was told he was gone. The same eyes would flutter over the photos and linger on the ones of Izuku, the light shining while she held his blanket or a toy. The outright defiance when they told her to prepare a funeral. The way she would take to the streets looking for him. She would take Kana's hand and tell her that he was alive. Maybe it was the guilt, but Kana wanted to believe. She needed to believe. The way Izuku looked at her, the way he had whispered, plus ultra, it lived rent-free in her mind, as did the look of terror when she was yanked out of the vehicle, leaving him behind. Then the phone call came. He was alive. The road before her was unknown, dangerous, and possibly endless. She knew Hasashi and Inko wouldn't waver, and neither could she. Izuku looked at her as a hero and said she was a hero. No matter what, she would be his hero. Lady Nagant could be more than a name in a registry, she could be a hero. Izuku. The white room was, well, it was white. The only color in the room was him and his parents. Honestly, it was enough, though it was a little boring. His parents slept holding him. He was in his mom's lap, and she was in his dad's lap. It was nice, beyond excellent, but it was a bit boring. There was nothing to look at, nothing to keep his mind from wondering what had happened. When he started to get scared by the thought of Reiko and her parents, he thought of Kana or, as she had whispered, Lady Nagant, his favorite hero. Like most children, his favorite had been All Might, but Lady Nagant was his new favorite after everything. Thinking of her made him feel safe. He was sad that he wouldn't see Reiko again anytime soon, but she promised to call him. It was strange. She treated him so well, not like the other kids in his class who treated him like he was quirkiness when he had a weak quirk. But his dad showed him he could still do good things in the world. He wanted to do good things in this world, but he had a burning question. Why am I being kept in this room? Izuku closed his eyes and thought, why was he in this room? What happened to him? Images flooded his mind, the monsters swarming over him, trying to tear at his flesh. With a roar of anger, suddenly, big, muscular green arms grabbed one and slammed it into the ground, and then another was smashed away in annoyance. The pain from their initial attack was gone. They were still attacking him, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was strange. He was watching it all through someone else's eyes. He was this co-pilot, not even that he was in the back seat watching through the windshield while someone else drove. Emotions crept in. Annoyance, anger, and rage. Soon, the strange monsters from the back of the truck were being destroyed by his bare hands, ripped limb from limb, callously destroyed. The way the things looked, at least, they seemed like monsters, like something from that late-night movie he shouldn't have watched and had given him nightmares. Then there was this tall, broad man with white hair and red eyes. How he looked at Izuku made him shiver. This was a bad person. Every instinct told Izuku this was the villain. Evil was standing there. Then they fought, and when the man grabbed his wrist, there was a pull. Izuku felt something being tugged on inside of himself. He didn't know what it was, but it was essential. He couldn't let it go. He wouldn't let it go. He could see it almost being pulled away till a giant green hand grabbed it and pulled it back. Again, emotions overwhelmed him. Possessive, defiant, and rage. Then there was the Thunder Man, the way he looked at Izuku, whose eyes were filled with disdain, and outright dismissal. Izuku knew that look was how Kachon looked at him, how he looked at Izuku when he called him Deku, called him useless. It was a violation on Izuku's part to breathe the same air, be in the same room, dare to dream, and be a hero. Izuku didn't like that look. In fact, that look made him angry. It always made him angry. He felt that anger seeps out of him, and the thing reacted to it. It didn't like the look the man gave it, the command to kneel. Then the lightning struck. Annoyance was annoying and loud, so the thing sent the annoying thing away. Gunships, machine guns. Izuku flinched. All he felt was the rage that was all Izuku could feel. Rage. His vision began to cloud over with rage. Just leave me alone. He could hear it. The thing was screaming. It wanted to go away and be left alone. Then it all stopped. It was so chaotic, with flashes of different places, going to the seaside, being attacked by this giant monster, constantly moving, and looking for peace. Till the cave was peaceful, the cave was safe. As the thing relaxed, Izuku felt it go to sleep. As it fell asleep, Izuku could feel the control shifting back to him. He was no longer the passenger, but instead, he was the driver. The thing was still in the back seat. It would shudder and stir, opening an eye to look out the window before going back to sleep. Izuku bolted upright. His sudden movement jostled his parents awake. He was sweating, and he looked around, comforted by the white room. In the dull white room, he felt his mother's arms squeezing him. He swore he could feel the thing's eyes open before shutting again. His voice sounded so far like he was underwater, but slowly, it became clearer. Nightmare, Izuku said. He could feel her calming down, her relaxing. The creature in the back seat seemed to do the same. The transport. Izuku was happy when they brought him food. French toast sticks, eggs, and potatoes. He even ate his salad. Lady Nagant brought it to him, so that made it all better. She even sat with him and ate her own meal, and his parents had gone to shower and change clothes. Can I go home now? Izuku asked after summoning the courage. Lady Nagant stopped eating, setting her fork down, and folded her hands in her lap. No, I am sorry, Izuku, you can't go home now. The monster opened one eye. Why? Izuku muttered, feeling sad and a bit scared. Something happened in that explosion, Izuku, she said, taking his hand. Something great because it saved your life, but also something that we need to try and understand so you can be safe. The green monster, Izuku whispered. Nagant's eyes widened slightly. Do you know about the green monster? I had a dream last night. I was watching it, angry. It was so angry, Izuku said, trying to remember what he had seen. Yes, Izuku, it is about that green monster, that hulking thing, she said, keeping her hand on his. We think that you transformed into that after the explosion and again at the ranger station when that idiot tried to take you away and hurt Reiko. The monster's eyes were both open now. Is it my quirk? Izuku asked, hopeful. We don't know, we think so. Nagant moved her food tray out of the way and pulled Izuku into her lap. But we need to figure that out so you can be safe. She ran her fingers through his hair. I want you to be safe, and if it is your quirk, how do you control it so other people will be safe? I swear to you, Izuku, I will be with you the entire time, I promise. Pinky swear? Izuku asked, holding out his pinky. If she pinky swore, it couldn't be broken, everyone knew it was an unbreakable promise. Kana wrapped her pinky around his. I swear, Izuku, but it will take some time. We will move from here to another place where you will live while we figure this out. She could almost feel the anxiety in him building. Your parents are going to be there. I am going to be there, and we will do everything we can to ensure you are safe. No white room, a real room with a television, and everything. She felt him relax. Can you be strong for your parents and me? Izuku nodded. He snuggled into Kana's arms for a moment before they returned to eating. After you eat and take a bath, we will leave here and drive to the new facility. Okay. Izuku nodded as he returned to eating, and the beast returned to sleep. General Thunderbolt. He was in his hospital room when his aide Takumi stood at rest, positioning her arms behind her back, waiting for him to acknowledge her. When he nodded his head, she began, Sir, it appears that Lieutenant Talbot has failed in his mission. The beast was spotted again at that location. According to the lieutenant's preliminary report, the Midoriya boy is the beast. Explain, he responded, his mustache twitching. The lieutenant reports that the boy transformed into the beast, attacked him and fled the area. She handed a folder. Major Brachys is reporting that a complaint has been filed against Lieutenant Talbot for illegal use of a quirk, assault and battery of 2 minors, false imprisonment, and attempted kidnapping. The Midoriyas have surrendered to the HSPC, particularly Lady Nagant, who was there. The HSPC has moved him to a secure facility for the night and is planning on moving the boy again tomorrow to their main facility in Tokyo. They are reporting it as a quirk reaction. She went back to rest position. Get me all the information you can on who found him. How they were able to stop him. I want it all, he ordered. Takumi saluted and exited the room. If that was his quirk, imagine if they harnessed it. He thought that this boy could shift battlefields and deter attacks with just the threat of unleashing him. This monster would be brought to heel, kept ready to be set out against the enemies of Japan. The HSPC was a joke. They couldn't contain the monster. He had to prove that Izuku Midoriya needed to be handled by military personnel headed up by himself. He could see it already. Little Yui was leading the division, able to deploy an armored response anywhere in the world, and the secret weapon of Izuku was at her beck and call. It was a simple plan. Find out how to trigger the monster and how to shut it down. The JDF would come in and take care of everything. He was putting a monster in the middle of Tokyo. Inconceivable. Tokyo. The room was sparse, but it seemed much more like a room than the bare white room he had been in. There was a bed, desk, table, chairs, a full bathroom, and just like she promised, a television. Thus began the long process of finding out what had happened to Izuku. Inko stayed in the room with him constantly. His father returned home to get them clothes and to bring a few things from the house to make Izuku feel more comfortable. Lady Nagant blushed slightly when Izuku asked if there was a stuffed version of her or an action figure his mother could buy for him. It was nothing she had ever concerned herself with and something the HSPC never did as well. After all, she was just a name on a registry. Riko kept her word and called him on Inko's phone when she could. It was to check on him and talk about their days or a television show. Inko smiled as Izuku went out of his comfort zone, watching things about ghosts and other supernatural stuff so he could talk to her about it. The first 2 months were more of an adjustment period. The battery of tests was not Izuku's favorite, but they weren't too scary. Though he didn't like that they took blood every other day, he dealt with it. Usually, he was rewarded with a candy of some sort for his excellent behavior. It was about the 3-month part when a tutor started coming to see him. Her name was Ms. Hiro, and she was not very tall with long blonde hair done up in a pristine fishtail braid, blue sclerae, and white irises. To Izuku, it looked like little boats floating on the ocean. She seemed very young but very nice. After meeting her, her smile put Izuku at ease. She never raised her voice with him, always keeping things light. She quickly lent a hand when he had trouble. Hina emerged from the room, waving goodbye. Her demeanor shifted as soon as the door closed, though a small smile still tugged at the corner of her lips. She left the false hospital corridor where her superiors were waiting to debrief her. Hina stepped in and was surprised to see the president of HSPC. The president was a middle-aged woman with a stoic and steely expression. She had a pair of turquoise eyes, and ash blonde hair slicked back. She wore a black suit jacket and dress, a purple shirt, and a necklace. She looked up at some paperwork she had been signing before handing it off to an aide who scurried off. As per protocol, she was accompanied by Mr. Smith. His stereotypical man in black attire is perfectly crisp and clean, his face even the stoic mask. Lady Nagant was present, of course, as was Waif, which was unusual. Dr. Banner, Mr. Midoriya, and Dr. Tokage rounded out the group. The only person missing was Overwatch. Am I to wait for Overwatch? Hina asked, standing next to her chair. Overwatch will not be joining us today, the president said. Report. Izuku continues to adjust to the daily routine. His marks are good, and he rarely makes the same mistake more than once. He is diligent and overall a well-behaved child, Hina stated. Is that all? Waif asked. Any sign of the other? No, not that I have seen, but he has expressed a desire to play outside. I have made excuses, but they seem to be wearing thin, Hina responded. He is a child. They need to go outside, his father said. We can't keep him locked up forever. Dr. Midoriya, we have no idea what possible triggers for his transformation are, and with the limited tests we have been able to run, all we can say for certain is that his cells seem to absorb gamma rays as they naturally occur, Dr. Banner said, turning to face Hasashi. That alone does not explain the transformation. What are you suggesting, Dr. Banner? The president commanded his attention. We should introduce him to a non-naturally occurring amount and see it as a possible trigger for his transformation. Dr. Brian Banner, Ph.D., is a renowned American theoretical physicist known for his nuclear physics and gamma radiation expertise. He was a person of slight build, with brown hair and eyes. He was brought in as an additional expert in the field of gamma radiation. That is ridiculous, Hasashi said, his hand striking the table. I must agree with Dr. Midoriya, Dr. Ross said, her voice full of concern. The odds of Izuku encountering such a thing once he leaves this institution is astronomical. Dr. Lizzie Tokage was the lead psychologist overseeing this case. Her long dark green hair hung down to the back of her knees when left free, but she normally would have it bun on the back of her head, held in place with a few writing instruments. She had these large, upturned, dusky green eyes. The oddity was how they betrayed her lizard quirk and the forked tail when she blinked. Also, I believe it will be in his best interest if he is allowed to go outside and interact with other children in some capacity. He has displayed an amazing amount of patience for a boy his age, and as of now, we are treading on the goodwill that Lady Nagant has earned with him. She added. I disagree, Dr. Tokage. We need to proceed with more aggressive testing to further understand how, even with a quirk that we are assuming, absorbed gamma radiation, he was still able to withstand and absorb such an amount so quickly without being killed, Dr. Banner argued. I would also like to look at the research into the storage units you could devise, Dr. Midoriya. Those are classified, Dr. Hasashi replied crisply. Well, Mr. Midoriya, the president said, leaning forward, her chin resting on her steeple fingers. As his father, I know my son. He needs to be able to go outside and play. His transformation was triggered by the first explosion, which I believe was a self-preservation reflex. The second was due to his desire to protect his friend and fear. I fear that continually exposing him to even more gamma radiation for no other reason than to see if he transforms is dangerous, he said, keeping his tone measured. Why would it be dangerous? She asked. Yes, it could trigger a transformation, which we can only hope to try and contain. Or it could oversaturate his cells, causing cellular breakdown and leading to his death. Hasashi said, glaring at Dr. Banner. We surrendered to you, hoping he could learn to control his transformation to lead a normal life. Ms. Hero, Hina thought, if his emotions, such as fear or even anger, can trigger a transformation, then wouldn't it be prudent to allow such simple things as playing outside to help maintain his present mental state? The president sat back and thought for a moment. Make arrangements for him to be outside. We can see how he reacts. Introduce him to some of the calmer children who come to the facility. Dr. Banner, we will limit the testing to what we have on hand. We will not be introducing any more gamma radiation to the boy. Though I would like to see if somehow absorbing the radiation from him would take away his transformation, then without a reintroduction, could he lead a normal life? Dr. Tokage, you are being placed in charge of his case now. Of course, any further testing will have to be signed off by his parents. Now excuse me, I have another meeting to attend. She stood up, as did everyone else, waiting for her and Mr. Smith to leave. All of you are missing the bigger picture, Dr. Banner huffed as she grabbed his files. Then why don't you enlighten us, Dr. Banner, Nagant said, having remained silent during the meeting. That child, regardless of his supposed quirk, should be dead. The amount of gamma radiation his cells would have absorbed is impossible. We need to find out how he survived. If it wasn't, then we need to know what happened. The answers are in that boy, and all these tests we are running are just about worthless. He replied angrily. Dr. Banner, may I remind you that the boy you are referring to is a living, breathing person, and this transformation you are so keen on triggering, how do you propose we handle that once he does transform? Nagant said, getting to her feet. I saw that Hulk tear apart creatures that killed members of our team, and it tore apart dozens. It then tossed around an unknown villain that seemed not only to have a strength quirk but some shock absorption. It then tore apart 4 gunships while taking not only sustained gunfire but missile strikes as well. So tell me, Doctor, if you release that in the middle of Tokyo, how are we to explain to that little boy once he calms down that he hurt and probably killed hundreds if not thousands of innocent bystanders all because you wanted to make him transform? Fine, he seethed as he left that room. He is an asshole, Waif said, earning a few laughs. Thank you, Dr. Tokage, Hasashi said, bowing to the woman. Call me Lizzie, she replied with a smile. I have a little girl about his age. She would have already gone crazy being in a room like that all the time. Well, Lizzie, call me Hasashi, and what is her name? Setsuna, but we call her Set. Drive Banner. Idiots, they are all idiots. Did they not see the potential here? We may be able to replicate his transformation, an entire platoon of Hulks. The key is how the gamma was changed when created and stored in the containment units. If we can control the saturation levels, then we can create more. He returned to his rented apartment, poured himself a drink, sat down, and pulled out a piece of paper and his phone. Yes, hello, I would like to talk to Corporal Takumi. Tell her if it is Dr. Banner calling about her offer. Undisclosed location. General Thunderbolt walked down the long hall, ignoring the looks he received as he puffed on his cigar, Takumi at his back. They stopped at the door. He looked at the camera as it heard the mechanism unlock and slide open. They entered the darkened viewing room. A few white coats were there. They immediately stepped to the side, allowing the general to approach the glass. His brow furrowed in disgust at what he saw. Dr. Samuel Stearns had mutated. Gone were the brown hair and eyes, the normal-looking skin tone. It was now green. His skull had expanded to hideous proportions. It was rippled and molded like a giant brain, and you could see it pulsing in some areas. A rough estimate was it was 4 times the size of an ordinary person. Green hair hung from the sides in a wild look, none dare it seemed to touch the mutated brain area. His eyes had grown more extensive. They were now green and nestled in an almost unnatural white field, making them stand out even more. Thunderbolt turned to the doctor's report. Well, sir, as you can see, the prisoner has undergone a rather drastic mutation, the first doctor said in a nasal tone that irritated the general. At first, we wondered if his head would explode, but as you can see, that was not the case. Yes, several exams have revealed that while the skull is intact, it has fused in some ways with the outer surface of the brain. Hence, you can see it pulsing at times. The second one chimed in, his voice carrying the tone of ego, that he was more intelligent and having to talk to other lesser than him was demeaning. His IQ has tested as high as those with intelligence-boosting quirks. Thunderbolt noted a hint of venom in that statement. Also, the subject has demonstrated that he possesses a photographic memory, something he didn't have before. Is he stable, physically, that is? The general said, studying the person in the cell. Why yes, the first doctor said. Though his brain may continue to expand as his intelligence increases, on a cellular level, he is stable. His quirk factor has increased, but because it was a minor intelligence booster and given his state. We believe the exposure to the gamma radiation mutated his cells and evolved his quirk as well, that the increased brain matter allowed his quirk to grow stronger, Dr. Tu said. Give your files on this matter to my aide and get out. He ordered. The two doctors handed over the files to his aide and left the room. He looked at Takumi as he placed her hand on the file, closing her eyes. He saw her eyes twitching behind her eyelids and waited patiently till she opened them. They didn't leave anything out. Sir, if this happened to him with a simple intelligence-enhancing quirk. Imagine what we could build with the right quirks, Thunderbolt grinned. First, we need the reports on the Midoriya boy and some more gamma rays. Thunderbolt walked over and pressed the intercom. Hello, Dr. Stearns. Ah, General, so nice to hear you again. Stearns turned to the mirror. Have you come to execute me? Not today, Stearns. You see, I would have agreed with you about the need to arm ourselves against those out there who conventional means. But you didn't come to me for that, did you? No, you wouldn't have paid me enough, Stearns replied, an uncomfortable smile spreading across his face. But now I see an opportunity to work together. Why would I do that? Because you're fascinated by what has happened to me. Stearns rose to his feet and ran his hands in an unsettling, sensual manner over his head. And you want to see if you can do it to others. Hasashi won't work with you. Only a handful of others could understand our work, and none are Japanese citizens. You don't like to share, do you, General? Stearns made a sweeping bow. Thunderbolt was surprised he didn't fall over with that massive head on his shoulders. Here is the deal, Stearns, you are going to work for me, Thunderbolt said. By doing so, you won't get put in some dark hole somewhere till you die, and also, you don't get executed for treason. I guessed as much, General. When do I start? Stearns kept his head bowed so the general didn't see the Cheshire grin across his face. The family grows. Izuku had just finished his class work when the door opened, and in walked his hero. He noticed she had a red bouncy ball tucked under her arm. Are you all done? She asked with a smile. Izuku looked to Hina, hoping that this all meant what he thought it meant. Hina nodded and smiled. Then why don't you put on your shoes, and we can go play? Nagant said, bouncing the ball. Inko was sitting on the bed, knitting and smiling at how Izuku lit up brightly. Okay, Onisan, he shouted, grabbing his shoes. Kana froze, the ball tumbling from her hands, her cheeks rosy. Inko's gentle laughter made her blush even more. I always wished for more children, Masumi-san. Inko's voice was teasing, but Kana could also feel the love. Kana felt like a young child again, not a trained fighter. She just smiled, and when Izuku came out, she took his hand in hers and walked with him to play. Unknown location. General, Takumi said once they were alone. Yes, Lieutenant. He turned and looked at his aide. General, I have to ask, why work with Stearns? Takumi asked. Developing these things. While normally I would demote you for daring to ask such a question, I believe that you should know. The general took a long drag from his cigar. After the uprising and war that broke out in South America, it became apparent that we are woefully unprepared should All Might endeavor decide that they will dictate where we will go, also those things reported at the base attack. He sighed. By all reports and what little footage we could obtain in their regards, I believe they are unnatural. With their defeat, I believe the one who is responsible will seek to improve them. HSPC agents, while not military trained, are formidable and capable most of the time. Of the squad that responded, only 4 made it out alive. I believe that number would be 0 if not for the appearance of that monster. Gamma weapons have the potential to stop even All Might should he go on a rampage, and to defend us from those homunculi from the base attack, and to protect Japan should another country decide to cross our borders with hostile intentions. He said. Sir, aside from the South American incident, there hasn't been a war in over 100 years, Takumi said. All it takes is one incident to change that, Thunderbolt replied. And I, for one, am not about to leave the security of this nation in the hands of the costumed idiots who are more interested in peddling hair products than stopping crime. You see the difference between the police and the heroes and them to us. We will not only be able to protect our nation should the worst occur, but we will allow those who did not win the genetic lottery to protect the streets and do more to guide this country in the future. All the power rests in the hands of a few, and when that happens, they are reluctant to surrender that power. With quirks getting more and more out of hand. I understand, General, she gave a crisp salute. I appreciate your explanation. As a soldier, once the order is given, you are expected to carry out that order on the belief that your commanders are acting on the best information and believe that this is the best course of action, Thunderbolt said, resuming his walk down the hall. What we are embarking on is that for you to complete this mission, you must understand the goal we are striving for. And the monster, Takumi replied, when he runs free, we will arrest him, Thunderbolt said. For now, let the HSPC deal with it. We have work to do. Yes, Dr. Brian Banner has reached out and would like to come on board, she added. Good, let's see that it happens, the general said with a smile. Izuku and his sister. Nope, Izuku shook his head. No way, I am not going to eat them. Kana looked at the Brussels sprouts on his plate. They are good for you, Izuku. They smell terrible, like when Monfrey farts. Izuku held his nose and pushed the plate away. Kana stifled a laugh. How about I eat half, and you eat half so we can both get dessert? Izuku looked at her dubiously. Please. Kana hit him with the big eyes. Fine. They both lifted one and shoved it in their mouths. Kayan spit hers out first, followed quickly by Izuku. That is gross, she yelled. I told you, Izuku said. She would sneak him dessert later and get scolded by Inko for doing so. Kiana couldn't have been happier. Judgment. Lieutenant Talbot. Never in the 35 years that we have sat on this tribunal have we ever seen such a blatant and flagrant disregard of conduct and military law regarding the usage of quirks against non-combatants. Not only did your actions escalate a situation, but you are also responsible for 125 million yen in damages and rising. Judge Ito said, you have disgraced yourself and the institution you swore to defend. You are now sentenced to 35 years incarceration, with the possibility of early release. You will be stripped of your rank and, upon release, be dishonorably discharged. The judge turned to Amiko and Inko. We find in favor your complaint and will award you the total compensation you requested, 50 million yen to the Unagi and 85 million to the Midoriya. I hope that both of your children will be able to move past this trauma and lead healthy and productive lives. This tribunal is adjourned. She banged her gavel. Inko and Amiko watched as Talbot was led from the courtroom in chains. The man stared at them defiantly as he was led away. Talbot was silent as he was shackled, silenced, and loaded into the transport. Inside, he was a ball of rage, wanting to scream at those damn judges. He was lost in his world till the transport stopped. When the door opened, he expected to see a military prison. Instead, he saw a troop transport. He was dragged and loaded aboard the transport. He tried to protest, but the guards ignored his muffled words. He noticed that he wasn't the only prisoner. There was the man seated across from him who had shaggy light brown hair and eyes and was not Japanese. What are you in for? He yelled, smirking at the muffled response. Wow, that sucks, he laughed. He listened. Blonsky. Emil Blonsky. When the transport landed and the ramp lowered, Talbot was surprised to see Thunderbolt standing there. Once they were led off the transport, one of the general's soldiers stepped forward and removed Talbot's shackles and gag. Hello, Lieutenant, Thunderbolt said. General, not that I am not happy to see you, Talbot rubbed his wrists. But where are we, and why am I here? Well, Lieutenant, you can either serve your time rotting in a cell or come work for me. The choice is yours, Thunderbolt gnawed on his cigar. If you prefer, I can put you back on that transport. I would rather work for you, sir, Talbot said quickly. Good, you may have messed up big-time soldier, but you are a damn good enlisted man, and I do not leave my men behind, Thunderbolt said. He looked to Blonsky, who was still shackled. Russian-born, English-raised, former British Special Forces, now mercenary for hire. They picked you up, trying to walk away with some important papers. Well, you know, Blonsky shrugged. Why am I here, General? I want you to do what you do, Thunderbolt replied. But I was hoping you could do that for me. I read your file, soldier, I know why they discharged you, and you did the right thing. I won't put you in that position, so do you want a place to belong or to keep running? All I have ever wanted to do was belong, sir, Blonsky said. I accept, General. Like holding water in a closed fist. Sir, she has refused another mission, the president of the HSPC. Yes, I read the report, Overwatch replied as he looked over the city. If her attachment to the boy is the problem, then she must be reminded why he needs the Commission's protection. Are we to arrange an incident then? The president took a seat. Yes, we will have her take an assignment. Make sure she understands that refusal is not an option. Overwatch glanced over his shoulder. Get the parents out of here for a few days. That will be difficult, the president replied. We must arrange it so the parents believe that Nagant will be here and vice versa. We will arrange for the incident to occur in the open, away from the facility, Overwatch said. Once he is recovered, it will be the end of this nonsense from the boy wanting to leave the facility. Nagant will realize that she needs our help to keep him safe, and if she wants to continue receiving that assistance, she needs to work. Where are we sending her? The president responded. I believe we should send her after target number 72, Overwatch said. Then have her escort him to Tartarus as a reminder of where her precious little brother may end up without our protection and assistance. Nezu looked at his phone, puzzled. It was not the call that he had expected. I can say with great certainty that you are the last person I expected to call me today, he answered. I wouldn't call you unless I felt there were no other options, the unexpected caller said. You know that. Then why are you calling? He said. I need your help, they said. If you don't help, then a whole lot of people are going to die, and a young child is going to be locked in a cage and never let go. And you know what that is like. Why not turn to your friends at the HSPC? Nezu said that, though he kept the mocking tone from his voice for the most part, he was unable to keep it entirely from his tone. You can always go fuck yourself, Nezu, the caller said. You choose the path you are on the same as I. Now, are you going to be a petty asshole? If so, then we are done here. I apologize, Nezu said. I understand you wouldn't be calling if there wasn't a reason behind it or if you had another recourse. Please explain. Thank you, the caller said. In 3 days, a boy will be taken from the facility in Tokyo under the guise of transporting him to an outside excursion. The Commission plans for an event to occur that will trigger the child's quirk. In the resulting chaos of attempting to wrangle the boy in a battle in the middle of the city will occur, and many people will be hurt if not killed as a result. First question, Nezu interrupted, what is this child's quirk? They don't know, and neither do I, the caller said. Before you ask, the boy quirk is some energy collection. They believe the child absorbs gamma radiation. An incident occurred where the boy was exposed to unprecedentedly high levels of gamma radiation that should have killed him. Instead, it triggered what they believe to be a secondary quirk where the boy transformed into a large, dangerous green hulking creature. What made this dangerous? Nezu asked. The boy was not in control when this transformation occurred and reacted in what can be described as a simplistic to animalistic state, the voice said. He engaged in battle with a high-ranking, powerful unknown entity, and unknown homunculi upon his initial emergence. After that, he battled with members of the JDF, including an Alpha-class registered lightning quirk and multiple gunships. After achieving victory, he fled. The boy re-emerged a month later, lost in the mountains, with no memories of the transformation or actions they had taken. Is this the green humanoid that appeared on the highway some months ago? Nezu said. Yes, and this thing you are saying is a child quirk? Nezu asked in disbelief. Yes. What triggers this transformation? Nezu asked as he pulled up the images. The trigger seems to be an emotional response, the voice said. It appears to manifest when the child is scared. It is believed that anger will also trigger the transformation. So the HSPC is planning on unleashing this boy in the middle of Tokyo, Nezu said. They hope his fear will keep him indebted to them after they bring him in, allowing them to use him for their own devices, as he will be eternally grateful to them for stopping him, and afraid of what will happen if he runs free again. Yes, I believe that is the case, the voice said. He had a positive experience with the hero in the video. Lady Nagant, Nezu said, looking at the video. Yes, she was able to talk him down. The two have also formed a sibling relationship by becoming family members, the voice paused. She has been refusing assignments as of late and taking more time to pursue heroics outside of the assignments given by the HSPC. So this will reign over her as well, as the HSPC will be the only organization that keeps her little brother safe, Nezu said with a great sigh. I am assuming that they are forcing Lady Nagant to take a mission that will put her out of the area. The children's guardians will be under the assumption that he will be with Nagant, giving them the peace of mind that their child will be safe, allowing them to leave to attend some personal or business matters. Yes, that is what I believe to be happening as well, the voice said with a slight tone of defeat. Now, I assume he has high regard for Lady Nagant. Is his like of heroes limited to only her, or are there others he has expressed interest in? Nezu pondered. He seems to love heroes in general, but he is a young child, the voice answered. He seems to respond to women very well. His mother and a young girl his age have been able to calm him down. He does not react negatively to men if that is any help. I believe I can work with that, Nezu said. Thank you, the voice said. Goodbye. The line went dead. Nezu sighed. He thought reminders of past mistakes were the devil's best torments. Inevitable. It was only a matter of time. The odds were that something would happen eventually, and the monster or Hulk would emerge. Izuku had started to become restless over the year he had been held at the facility. There had been no incidents since he was brought to the facility, and being allowed to play outside of his containment cell with some of the other children helped, but hearing how they were allowed to leave the facility had become troublesome. He wanted to leave the facility as well, constantly being told maybe next weekend or not. This time had begun to frustrate him to no end. When he was finally told he would go out, he was overjoyed at the thought. No thoughts of treachery or ulterior motives crossed his mind, believing they all had his best interests at heart. It didn't dawn on him that his parents wouldn't be with him. They had returned home to finalize the sale of their home as they were relocating to Tokyo, or that Kana wasn't going to be with him as she had been called away on emergency hero work. He was just excited about going outside. He had been watching the commercials for Godzilla vs. All Might, so when they told him that he would get to go to the movies, eat lunch at Hero World, and stop for ice cream on the way home, he was over the moon. He sat waiting in his homemade Nagant hoodie, his blue jeans and shoes waiting. He wished that Ms. Hero would come with him, but she couldn't, so he stuck with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith was fine but quiet. He didn't know any good jokes, but he would at least smile. Izuku climbed into the SUV and buckled his seatbelt, his All Might backpack next to him. He kicked his feet in excitement. Being outside the walls of his normal containment area was so exhilarating that he couldn't stop smiling. Then everything went wrong. Izuku looked out the window at the buildings and streets passing by. He smiled as he saw the city for the first time, all the interesting people and mutations, and even catching glimpses of some heroes on patrol. When a van ran a light, he pointed and asked a million questions, and his world exploded into chaos. The sudden impact would be something that Izuku would never forget. The way that everything slowed down, the sudden rush of fear, and the violent impact that caused the SUV to roll. He could see the glass break and heard the metal creak and bend, and Mr. Smith crumbled into dust in his seat, unmoving. The seat belt failed, and his little body slammed around the vehicle. Pain flooded him. The monster in his mind roared as Izuku's world went black. People screamed as chaos took over. The tumbling car slammed into and over another vehicle, and pedestrians scrambled for cover as the van careened off another car and slammed into the side of a building. Some people started to move towards the chaos and called for help. The SUV shook, causing the first responders to pause, and then it exploded open, and the roar that came with it seemed to silence everything. People fell back from the explosion of car parts, staring in horror as the Hulk emerged. Its footsteps shook the ground. It glared around at all the people surrounding it and roared a challenge. People began to scream and flee. When its mighty fist swung, it sent an abandoned car skidding across the intersection, slamming into and toppling a traffic signal. The occupants of the first vehicle called for help and screamed in terror as the beast stalked towards them. A local hero ran, summoning all the courage they could muster. They jumped off their 10 speed with a mighty cry of, Justice crash, and sent it crashing into the back of the green beast. The hero leapt and twisted as they flipped over, positioning themselves between the terrified civilians and the strange beast, landing with the classic superhero tradition. The hero is a young man of average height and weight. He wears an armored suit with brown armor covering his torso and shoulders. Underneath the armor, he has a black leather suit, black gauntlets, and knee pads. He also wears a green bicycle helmet and dark-shaded goggles. Additionally, he has short brown hair and oval-shaped glasses that obscure his eyes. Not another step, the man proclaimed as he adopted a classic boxer's pose. The Justice Rider will not allow you to harm anyone else. Cries of joy erupted at the arrival of Justice Rider, a street-level hero known for his strong sense of justice, caring personality, and mighty riding ability. He once stood between a gang and a local shop owner, battling all 8 members and not allowing them to enter the shop. Then there was the time he chased down a runaway bus on his mighty Justice bike or saved 3 puppies from a raging stream. Justice Rider, help, came a call from the crushed vehicle. We are trapped, my wife and daughter are hurt. Please, hero. Never fear, citizen help is on the way, Justice Rider said. I will keep you safe until then. Now, sir, I ask that you stand down and surrender to the call of justice. The Hulk turned and looked over his shoulder, then kicked the Justice bike away, sending it flying through the air and embedding it in the 4th story of a nearby building. No, Justice bike, Justice Rider called out. Man, I just got it out of the shop, he muttered. The Hulk stepped forward. I warned you, foul beast, in the name of justice, he called out. Justice punch. The hero pushed off the ground, leaping forward, pulled back their fist, camera phones recording, and delivered a mighty Superman punch that would have leveled a lesser foe. Still, today, Justice collided with the Hulk. The punch landed flush on the cheek, and with a sickening crack, the hero's hand crumpled and broke. He fell back, and the crowd gasped as the hero stumbled, holding their broken hand. I see you are tough, but justice will not be felled so easily today, he said. I didn't want to do this, but you have left me no choice. The hero stepped back and took a crane pose. A hush fell over the battlefield. I warn thee, beast, not another step unless you wish to fall this day. The Hulk growled as a small voice screamed nonsense in its mind. The Hulk stepped forward with a grace that would forever imprint on those there that day, stirring a young girl's heart with a rabbit quirk and even bringing one man to tears. Justice Rider bounced forward and pushed off the ground. Justice crane kick of Devistation. He roared. The rising kick landed true, and the beast's head moved. Of its own volition, the hero's foot didn't break but did fracture. He landed, seeing his opponent still standing, hiding the tears of pain behind his glasses, took to the air again. Justice spin. A mighty spin kick of Justice collided with the best. Its head did not move, its annoyance flashed. Before the hero could land or register the broken bone in his leg, a mighty backhand sent the hero flying. Crashing to the pavement, he bounced and rolled to a stop against the same building that held his mighty Justice bike. The air was sucked out of the crowd. As the Hulk continued towards the car, people began to scream and throw objects, hoping to not only distract the Hulk but to allow Justice Rider to rise once again. The Hulk grabbed the top of the vehicle and tore it open like one would tear a piece of paper. The man inside the car activated his quirk, sending a barrage of rainbows toward the Hulk. People screamed as the beast reached in and tore away pieces of metal, lifting an unconscious child. It turned and set the child gently to the ground before doing the same with the mother. The man flinched when the massive hand tore their seatbelt free. It turned to the stunned crowd, and with a quick hop, it landed at the van that was the cause of everything. It tore the door off, expecting to see a driver, but instead, there was only a mechanical apparatus attached to the steering wheel. With a rapid beeping sound and the scream of the little voice in its head, the Hulk grabbed the van and crumpled it against its body as it exploded. The Hulk growled in annoyance. Whoa there, big guy. A voice came from the sky. Looking up, a boy with light blue wavy hair swept back above his head with 2-ear-length tuft handing down was above the scene riding a cloud. Dressed in the standard light gray blazer with dark turquoise trimmings over a white dress shirt and red tie, he screamed to everyone here that he was a student at UA and hadn't come alone. As the cloud landed, he was accompanied by another boy dressed the same way, with shaggy black hair and a tired expression. There was a mirror opposite to the Cloud Rider, and with them was a girl wearing the girl uniform, but her top was unbuttoned to a rather inappropriate level, her skirt was hiked up, her back hair was pulled back in a ponytail, her face held a pout as she crumbled about not being in her hero costume. "No, stay back," Justice Rider said, struggling to his feet not only to collapse from his self-inflicted injuries but from the ones suffered from when the Hulk struck him. "It will be all right," a small chimera creature said, placing its paw on the hero's shoulder. "You're the principal of UA," Justice Rider said. Nezu smiled. "That I am. Those students can distract the creature as we get these people to safety." "All Might is on his way." Nezu turned to some of the civilians and gave an order. They lifted Justice Rider, carrying the hero to safety, as the pro-hero Cementos began to erect barriers, ordering people away. "Loud Cloud, get the injured away," he called as he walked towards the Hulk. "Roger that," the boy responded. A cloud formed around the injured mother and daughter, lifting them up and out of the area. The boy with black hair ran to the man, slipping his arm over his shoulder to help him evacuate. 2 armored response units from the JDF arrived before the barriers shutting them out were erected. Nezu saw the soldiers come out carrying strange black rifles with a tube running from them to a strange device on their back. The top of the vehicle was what appeared to be some pulse cannon. Their rapid response and strange armament concerned Nezu. It told him that they were also here for the child. He quickly deduced that it must have been from the incident on the freeway. He had been concerned that the military had shown up at the incident so quickly. He had surmised that they were in pursuit of the creature. The girl took a deep breath, pulled a bullwhip behind her back, and strolled to the Hulk. "Well, hello there, big boy," she licked her lips seductively. "You know I have a thing for Midnight, 8-year-old boy." The boy with black hair yelled as he eyed the beast warily. "Oh right," she snapped her fingers. "Sorry, Eraserhead, I saw all the muscles and got carried away." "Fall back," a soldier yelled as they spread out, getting into precise firing positions. The Hulk growled, stomping its foot, making everyone stumble. Eraserhead hair floated up as his quirk activated. The beast stumbled, grabbing its head. Then it roared, looking around and locking eyes with the UA student. Eraserhead had to blink, his quirk cutting off. Loud Cloud came diving down, tackling his friend to the ground as a car bumper came flying at them. "Take it out," came the call. The weapons came to life as green energy ripped from them. Midnight dived for cover. The Hulk stumbled slightly before it grabbed what was a piece of the van and threw it into the armored vehicle, nearly cutting it in half. Midnight tried to move, only for a stray shot to strike near her, sending her back to the ground. Nezu called for them to stop firing. His call was ignored. Large spherical devices were thrown toward the Hulk. The first exploded with black spikes with a strange green hue. As the grenade blast exploded out, they tore into the flesh of the Hulk, seemingly hurting it. But that wasn't all. They tore through the vehicles and Midnight's leg as well. As did her friends. The girl screamed, seeing more projectiles in the air. Midnight covered her head as they exploded. Nezu saw everything in slow motion, the explosion, the spikes flying towards his student, but he also saw the beast move. Midnight saw death coming for her. She braced for the end, only for it to never come. She opened her eyes, and over her was the beast that had sheltered her from the explosion. Everyone watched as the smoke cleared to see the Hulk over her, the spikes pushing out its body as it healed at an incredible rate. Nezu noticed that it was also larger. Midnight looked into the monster's eyes. She was amazed to see such caring for a moment, and then she saw it turn to rage. "No, wait," she called as it turned and, with a blinding speed, slammed into his second armored vehicle, tearing it apart, grabbing the gun from the top, and destroying it. Eraserhead activated his quirk again, hoping it would stop the beast. Instead, the creature's pulse of green energy forced him to shut his eyes. Nezu saw the pulse explode out, but when Eraserhead's quirk shut off, he saw it absorb back into the beast. The soldiers opened fire, and the creature tore into them, crashing through the cement barriers that sprung up in its way. It grabbed the rifles from them, tearing them away, snapping limbs as it destroyed their weapons. Chaos filled the area again as the beast could not stop taking out the soldiers. Nezu noticed that despite the creature's immense strength, it could have turned those men into pulp, but it was simply removing their weapons. When one threw a grenade at the beast, it caught it in its hand and let it explode. When its massive fist opened, the spikes tumbled to the ground. It flicked the soldier in the chest with its finger, sending him flying. Loud clouds sprang into action, surrounding the beast in a thick cloud and trying to lift it away from the battle. Everyone was thrown to the ground when a massive THOOM was heard, and the cloud was blown away. The creature was standing there with its hands together as it had just clapped them together. Nezu stared at the creature as it scanned the area. Its gaze turned back to Midnight, who had bandaged her leg. It took a step towards her. Suddenly, "That is far enough, foul beast." A booming voice from the sky yelled. "All Might no!" Nezu screamed. "Detroit smash!" All Might yelled as he came down, landing his blow across the creature's jaw, jerking it violently to the side. The Hulk stumbled as blood flew before it regained its balance. "My, you are a tough one." A lightning combination followed by an uppercut that lifted the Hulk off its feet, sending it flying away and crashing into the containment barriers. "But you are done." There was a growl as the Hulk reached its feet, spitting out a tooth. The creature grinned. Nezu noticed that it seemed to hear something that annoyed it. "I guess you are not done, but that means I just have to hit you harder." All Might yelled. "Ohio smash!" The number 1 hero jumped forward, ready to end the fight. His fist tore through the air, only to meet a massive green palm. The impact shook the area. The Hulk moved back a fraction of an inch, an enormous grin across its face. "Uh-oh." The Hulk's hand closed around All Might's fist with a sickening crunch, as its other hand landed a mighty blow to the hero's stomach, driving all the air from the number 1 hero. But the Hulk wasn't done as it turned and slammed All Might over its head into the ground. It yanked the hero up and did it again. Blood flew from All Might's mouth as he tried to free itself from the beast's grip. Now, All Might had been hit hard before, but when the creature threw him away, only to yank him back into a straight right, he was hard-pressed to remember when. When the Hulk went to yank him back again, All Might twisted in the air and landed a kick to the Hulk's face, drove his elbow down into the Hulk's forearm, breaking it, and his broken hand was freed. He landed and speared the Hulk back. He dug his hands into the creature's ribs as he attempted to hoist it up to slam it. To the crowd's surprise, a double axe handle smash ended that. The Hulk punted the hero away so hard he tore through the cement barriers and into a building. The Hulk roared, screamed at the hole the hero made. A hush fell only for All Might to explode out and land a left hook, rising knee, that lifted the Hulk into the air. All Might jumped and grabbed the Hulk by the leg, spinning like a top, Oklahoma slam. The Hulk came crashing down through the street, and there was silence. All Might landed, raising his fist as a sign of victory. The crowd cheered wildly. Nezu put his ear to the ground. He didn't even have a chance to shout a warning as 2 massive hands broke through the ground, grabbing All Might around the ankles like a bad horror movie. All Might was yanked underground. The ground shook as the unseen battle raged, and then a massive roar from the beast and the number 1 hero emerged from the underground, not of his own volition, arching high into the air. All Might crashed into the 25th story of the Nerby office building. The Hulk climbed out of the hole, raising its head to the sky. It roared in triumph. "Izuku," Nezu called out as he approached hesitantly. "I need you to calm down." The Hulk glared and took a swipe at Nezu. Though the principal could dodge the attack, the wind pressure sent him tumbling. Loud Cloud and Eraserhead jumped into the attack, and again, the Hulk clapped its hands together, sending them flying away. It began to stalk towards them, and when encased in 2-foot-thick cement, it tore out with little effort. "Help me," Midnight called out. "Izuku, I need you to save me." Nezu froze as he saw his student reaching out towards the creature. "Help, Izuku," she pleaded again. Nezu watched as the Hulk turned and hopped to her side, lifting her gently in his arms. "I need you to take me to UA so I will be safe," she said. "Please." Nezu watched as the Hulk held her protectively. "That way," Midnight said. "No, Nemi," Eraserhead yelled. Midnight held her hand out as he went forward, telling him to stop. "Ignore them, Izuku. Please rescue me," she said, touching the creature's cheek. The Hulk roared. It crouched before he leapt up and away, heading towards the southwest. "Nezu, we must go after her," Loud Cloud yelled. "Why didn't you stop her? She was getting him away from the civilian population. Nezu said as All Might landed, ready for another round. Where has he gone? All Might yelled. He took Midnight and fled that way. Eraserhead said, pointing to the southwest. She is trying to lead him to UA. Thank you, young man, I will intercept them. All Might went to leave, only for Nezu to stop him. Take me with you, Nezu said. You two follow behind. Cemento see to the area. Nezu landed on All Might's shoulder as they took off through the air. Midnight, she had made a gamble, and it seemed to work. As they flew through the air, she marveled at the massive strength this creature, this Hulk, possessed. The way it cradled her protectively with each leap was a somewhat breathtaking way to travel. She discreetly let slip some of her gas. She saw the creature inhale it, its eyes softened before they refocused. She kept guiding the beast towards the school, sending a message to Recovery Girl that she was coming in injured and with a possible hostile. With each leap, they got closer. She pointed the way when the creature looked lost, thanking him for saving her. Once she saw the edge of the city, she led him to the athletic field, where he landed before the staff. The Hulk growled and wrapped Midnight in both arms, turning her away from them. Thank you for saving me, Izuku, she said. But it is time for me to save you. Her quirk erupted from her, enveloping them in a thick pink cloud. She heard him growl and stumble. It's okay now. I am safe, thank you, she said, her hand on his cheek. Sleep, she whispered as the creature's eyes closed. She knelt beside him, staring in amazement as the massive green creature disappeared and a young boy with green hair lay asleep on the grass. You're safe now, Izuku, she whispered as she pulled his head into her lap. I will protect you now. She saw him smile and relax. All Might came in hot, ready for another battle with Hulk. Nezu leapt off his shoulder and rolled as he hit the ground. I am ready for round 2. He bellowed. He saw the girl that the Hulk had grabbed. In her lap, a boy rested asleep with a blanket over him. All Might was stunned, and then the boy twitched. A growl erupted from the boy. Get back, he yelled. Midnight glared at the hero. Nezu dove away as she activated her quirk, flooding the area with her sleeping gas. All Might wobbled and fell face first to the ground. When the gas cleared, Nimari was sitting with Izuku's head in his lap, lightly stroking his hair. Why do birds suddenly appear? Every time you are near. Are they like me? Do they long to be close to you? Do-ba-do, she sang wistfully. Nezu looked over at the staff, notably Recovery Girl. She had been reluctant to allow anyone close to the boy, she said, motioning behind her to a few sleeping students and faculty members. Ms. Kayama, Nezu said, approaching the girl with the sleeping Izuku on her lap. Yes, Principal Nezu, she responded innocently. We need to move the boy inside the medical wing, Nezu said calmly. When the military and police arrived, he noticed her glaring at him. You know they will. It would be best if he were somewhere he felt safe and all the commotion didn't startle him into another transformation like today. You can sit with him to keep him safe. I am sure his parents will be most appreciative when they arrive. You are probably right, Nimari said, lifting Izuku. The boy shifted and wrapped his arms and legs around her like a spider monkey, his head resting on her shoulder. Nimari looked so happy, carrying him to the medical wing. Once they were gone, Nezu reached into his vest, pulled out some smelling salts, and waved them under All Might's nose. The #1 hero pushed up off the ground, ready to fight. He was confused when he was alone with Nezu and Recovery Girl. May I borrow your cane? Nezu asked Recovery Girl, the woman who handed it to him. He gave a test swing, adjusted his grip, leapt into the air, and hit All Might on the top of his head, eliciting a yelp of pain. That is very satisfying. I see why you carry a cane, Nezu said, handing it back to Recovery Girl. I think I may need to start carrying one. See, now you understand. She pulled All Might down and kissed his forehead before she walked back to the school. Ow, Nezu, what was that for? Where is that green behemoth? All Might said, rubbing his head. I told you I needed you to come in and do as I say, not to start attacking the first thing you saw. Nezu said. It escalated an already tense situation that didn't need further escalating. The unfortunate arrival of Justice Rider had seen to that. That green behemoth was doing battle with those soldiers. I had to interfere, All Might protested. Did you not notice green laser weapons? Nezu rubbed his nose. The green behemoth, as you put it, was the situation we were there to defuse. That boy you saw sleeping on the lap of one of my students was the IT. He reacts that way due to fear, and we are not sure why it is that way. We were made aware that this was an attempt to cause the boy to rampage in the middle of Tokyo to enforce his servitude to the HSPC. I asked you there in case it escalated out of control not to escalate the situation further. Did you not find it odd that 2 military units were outfitted with experimental weaponry on the scene at that moment? That was a bit odd, All Might said, rubbing his chin. That green Hulk, Nezu said. The Hulk is a manifestation of that child's quirk, All Might said slowly, and the HSPC was looking to trigger that transformation in the city, so they were aware of it and triggered ahead of time. I have always suspected that the HSPC was not completely above board, but what does the military have to do with this? It is believed that the boy's quirk accumulates gamma radiation, Nezu said as they started to walk towards the school. The child was caught up in an explosion where a massive amount of gamma radiation was released, triggering what is thought to be a mutation. The interesting part. Wait, that isn't the interesting part, All Might said. The boy does not appear to be in control when the change happens. Nezu swiped his access card as they entered a private hallway. The Hulk is animalistic. It fought a high-level criminal, members of the JDF, including an Alpha-class lightning quirk. Before it fled, the boy was found over a month later wandering the woods. When confronted by a hostile force, he again transformed, and that was when he was captured on the news. I thought I recognized him, All Might said, snapping his fingers. How many large green Hulks do you deal with on a normal basis? Nezu said, perplexed. I don't, so I only read the news article, All Might laughed. We were attempting to contain the situation when you came in and decided to punch first, Nezu said. All Might stopped laughing. Toshi, there is something else, Nezu said. The emotion of the conversation changed. I talked to an old friend, Nezu continued. When the military base was attacked, there were strange homunculi present at the attack. There was also a large man with white hair over 7 feet tall, red eyes floating above the scene in command of the attack. All Might froze, his smile faded, and his entire demeanor shifted. That boy destroyed all his minions, engaged him in direct combat, and forced him to retreat. Are you sure? All Might said. Yes, I believe my source. They said that the man grabbed the Hulk, and nothing happened except that he got ragdolled by the Hulk before retreating when the military showed up. Nezu's cheek twitched slightly. That same boy who just fought you and got the better of the exchange. That boy has come out victorious against you, All Might, and won for all. Nimari. She was directed to a private room with her precious cargo. When she went to set Izuku in the bed, his grip tightened. It's okay. We are both safe now, she whispered. You saved me, and now it is my turn to protect you. Can I protect you now? She felt a deep rumble from within the boy as his grip eased and released. She tucked the blanket under his chin before she exited the room to receive more treatment from Recovery Girl. She had consented to a kiss on the forehead for the initial wound, but now she was ready for a complete examination. She had just finished when Eraserhead, Loud Cloud, Shota, and Oboro came running in. Howdy, boys, she said with a wink as she adjusted her stockings. Miss me. I am going to murder you, Shota yelled. Nemi, Oboro said, I am glad you are safe, but what were you thinking? Besides following orders, she said, slipping on her shoes. We were supposed to try and keep the kid safe. What if that thing decided to tear you apart? Shota said. It was trying to protect me and others, Nimari replied. It could have torn those soldiers to pieces, but it didn't. Remember what Nezu said about how that boy liked heroes? When we couldn't slow him down, I didn't want him fighting with All Might, and I didn't know if my gas would work, so I thought getting him away from the civilians would be best. It was a right idea, Shota said. That didn't mean you didn't scare the shit out of us. Yeah, Nemi, Oboro added. We were scared something happened. Where are you going? Back to the kid, Nimari said. I promised I would protect him. You can come. Oh, and tell Hasashi if he comes and wakes him up, I will break him in half. Once she was gone, she seems caught up with this kid. Shota said. I have never seen her like this, Oboro added. Hopefully, it doesn't lead to problems. Weren't you supposed to begin your internship today? Shota asked. Yeah, but when Nezu calls, Oboro shrugged. Problems. Nezu was right. It wasn't long before the military and police, along with members of the HSPC, descended upon UA. The first to arrive as expected was the HSPC, Chief of Security Agino Masa, who stepped off the helicopter. Agino was a man with a broad stature and hardened features. The man had an aura of not dealing with nonsense or having the world's lowest tolerance for it, so when he stepped off the helicopter, flanked by a 4-person team of the HSPC, including Momentum and Morph, the other two were twins women with black hair pulled in a tight braid, their eyes hidden behind sunglasses, matching black suits with metallic gloves. We are here to retrieve Izuku Midoriya, Masa said. He is under the care of the HSPC, and with the incident, we need to get him back into containment as quickly as possible. Well, that sounds very serious, Nezu said, seated on the shoulder of his combat instructor, the pro-hero mime. I am afraid that I must decline till the boy's parents come and authorize me to release him. We are asking as a courtesy, Masa replied. And I am telling you, Nezu said, his smile fading. I will not release the boy to anyone but his parents or a court-appointed guardian. Now, Mr. Masa, if you wish for this situation to escalate further, I am sure that you will find the faculty of the UA more than willing to accommodate you. Or you can have the parents come here and tell me to release them to you. Nezu paused, tapping his cheek. But I find it odd that the boy was on an excursion without a parent present and that the vehicle that struck the transport appeared uncrewed. I have one of my top investigators on the scene. Nezu smiled. Where is the child? Masa asked as more members of the UA staff made themselves visible, along with All Might, who walked out to eat a sandwich. Resting, Nezu said, looking as another chopper came into view, this one the JDF, and it wasn't alone as an APC was also entering the area. Oh dear, it seems to be getting crowded, Nezu sighed. I expect the police will be here soon. Thunderbolt stepped off his chopper, flanked by his assistant, as members of the JDF began to disembark. Nezu noted that the strange weapons they carried were the same ones that had responded to the incident. It was quickly getting crowded on the field, and tensions were increasing. We are here for the boy, Thunderbolt ordered as he walked up. He is a possible danger and needs to be safeguarded not only for his safety but also for the nation's safety. I don't think so, General, Masa replied. The HSPC will be taking the boy back to our facility. You failed to contain the threat once, what makes you think you won't fail to do so again? Thunderbolt glared at Nezu. It was fortunate that you happened to be in the area, along with you All Might. I was passing through, All Might said as he came to stand with Nezu. I am afraid that I must agree with Nezu that parents must be consulted in this important matter as things must be addressed. Standing out here glaring at each other isn't going to do anything. How about we go inside and wait for them to arrive? Thunderbolt gnawed on his cigar before reluctantly agreeing, as did Masa. They left orders and followed Nezu into the school to a waiting board room. That thing is a dangerous animal, Thunderbolt said once inside. On that, we can agree, Masa replied. But we believe the boy can harness and learn to use the beast for good. We, the HSPC, are already committed to helping him achieve his maximum potential. By letting him run rampant in the streets, Thunderbolt countered. It is fortunate that there was no loss of life today. That is an interesting point, Nezu said as some refreshments and food were brought in. From what I observed, the beast, or Hulk, as I call him, seemed very concerned with public safety. He used his body to shield the innocents when the van exploded, extradited that child, and protected a student when your military detonated some rather interesting explosive devices. He also assaulted those soldiers. He is lucky they are only in the hospital, Thunderbolt said. Lucky? Nezu raised an eyebrow. It seems that the Hulk was more than capable of killing those soldiers, but instead, the fact that they are in the hospital and not the more is an interesting fact. Yes, the Hulk is quite a powerful foe, All Might said. But he seems to react to outside factors, such as when the soldiers attacked, or I did myself. When one of the poor students caught up in this infraction asked to be saved, the Hulk did just that. If you say so, Thunderbolt said. Izuku. His eyes opened, he sat up quickly looking around, He started to panic until he saw a girl sitting by his bedside. At the foot of his bed were two boys all dressed in the most famous school uniforms ever. The sleepy guy seemed a bit scary, the other just smiled, but the girl who smiled sweetly at him made him feel at ease. His lower lip trembled. "I didn't kill anyone, did I?" he said to her. "No, nothing of the sort, Izuku," the girl said, sitting beside him on the bed. "There were some injuries," she said soothingly. She slipped her arm around her shoulder. "But it could have been a lot worse. You should know that the Hulk tried to protect people, he even helped keep me safe." "Hulk, is that his name?" Izuku said, trying to calm down. "He tried to be a hero." "I wouldn't," the tired boy with black hair began to say before the other one elbowed him. "I mean, he seems to have a strong protective instinct." "That is good. Very good," the boy added with a nice smile. "It could have been much worse, but the Hulk seemed to be responding to threats and not seeking them out. Kind of like playing defense." "That is good." Izuku looked up to the girl. "You smell nice." "I don't know, but it makes me feel safe." "Thank you, Izuku," she said. "You can call me Nemi. That tired one is Aizawa, and the other is Oboro. Do you know where you are?" He said hesitantly, but her smile told him he was right. "I want to come here one day if I can figure out a way to control my transformation." "I think that the transformation is just a part of you," Nimori said. "You don't want to hurt people, you want to keep people safe, and the Hulk did that." She smiled. "It may take time, but I would try to figure out how not to control the transformation but make it part of you. Like two halves making it whole." "Am I in trouble?" Izuku said hesitantly. "There is trouble," Aizawa said. "But you are not in trouble, Izuku. Some things need to be sorted out. Nezu, the principal, will handle it." "Yeah, kid, the principal has it in hand," Oboro said enthusiastically. "Are you hungry?" Before Izuku could respond, his stomach did it for him, making everyone laugh. Yui sat mesmerized by the screen as images of a great big green beast were plastered everywhere. The footage of his battle had the girl mesmerized. Every time the beast roared, she would smile in the end. When it called out in triumph, the girl did the same. She began to leap around the room, roaring at her dolls and tossing them around, mimicking what she had just seen. The conference room. There were periods of silence as Masa and Thunderbolt made their cases for jurisdiction over the boy, arguing over who was better equipped to contain him. Nezu let them argue as he was recording the conversation and would use that to his benefit once the parents arrived. When Izuku was informed that they were at the gates, he immediately ordered them to be admitted and brought to the conference room. It wasn't long until they came in, the boy's mother looking frantic. "Where is my son?" she demanded. "He is currently with the students he encountered this afternoon," Nezu said promptly. He hit some keys on a keyboard, and an image appeared floating in the middle of the room. Izuku sat with the three students beside the female one as he happily ate a hamburger. "I wouldn't recommend having him brought here at the moment," Nezu added, looking around the room. "But if you like Mrs. Midoriya, I can take you to him, but it would be best if you calmed down first. Also, these gentlemen have been discussing your son's future and who has the right to house him." Inko's worry shifted to anger as she glared at Masa and Thunderbolt. "What is it that you want?" Hasashi said. "The same," Nezu said smiling, "but for very different reasons than them. It would be best if you let them speak, and I will give you my sales pitch. I know you are worried, but I promise you he is safe, unharmed, and in good hands." "Where is Kana?" Inko said, staring at Masa. "Lady Nagant has pulled away on an important mission," Masa said. "It was unavoidable." Inko looked at him dubiously. "General, why are you here?" Hasashi said. "As you are aware, I first encountered the Hulk after the attack on the facility," Thunderbolt said. "No one was aware at the time that it was your son. It escaped after attempting to subdue what we believed to be a hostile entity. When he re-emerged, I sent Talbot to retrieve him in the name of national security." "You sent that bastard," Inko said. "He assaulted my son and little Reiko as well. He just made everything worse." Thunderbolt gnawed on his cigar momentarily. "I believe he has been properly punished for his lack of judgment. But today, your son ran rampant again, attacking civilians, pro-heroes, and military personnel. He is dangerous and needs to be contained in a secure facility where he can be properly trained, and the general populace can be kept safe. About that general, Hisashi said. I noticed the rapid response of that military personnel with rather advanced weaponry that I would guess was gamma-powered. Hasashi looked at Nezu. You were also very quick to arrive on the scene. Your research was done under the JDF, Thunderbolt said. What that research is used for is not your concern. And the troops were lucky to be in the area in an attempt to stem the rampage of your son, Dr. Midoriya. You were lucky that charges were pressed against him as soon as it was realized that the Hulk and he are the same person. Inko looked about, ready to attack the Thunderbolt. If looks could kill, he would have been struck dead. Listen, the boy will return to the facility in Tokyo under the protection of HSPC, Masa said. Obviously, him being allowed out of the facility was a mistake, and maybe after a few years, that matter could be readdressed. A few years, Inko said, stunned. Hasashi, they are trying to lock him up. He will never get to have a life like this. I want Kana here. Hasashi put his arm around his wife. What is your explanation? He said to Nezu. Oh, we were tipped off that your son was going to be taken out of the HSPC facility while you and your wife were away, as well as Lady Nagant, he said with a chipper tone. Of course, each party believed the other one would be present. They never discussed your son leaving the facility, did they? The Midoriyas shook their head. You see, someone else tipped off the general here, which is why he was there. His new weapons were there to try and take your son down as he had failed to do so, and conventional weaponry seemed to have little to no effect. Nezu took a sip of his tea. I wanted to be there to connect with the Hulk and prevent anyone from being killed. I believe that was the hope of the HSPC in this escapade. They planned on triggering his transformation and hoped that something terrible would happen, and then they would be the only ones you could turn to for his protection. You see, they are looking to control your son. What is that you want? Inko asked. I want to give him control, Nezu smirked. Let me propose this, give me 2 weeks, and I will tell you about this transformation from boy to Hulk. The HSPC may send a representative to monitor everything we do in the JDF. So everyone can monitor the situation. Nezu paused, looking at the Midoriyas. They are not wrong. It can be perilous if your son doesn't learn to control this. Holding him in isolation is a terrible idea. He is a child, and children need to be exposed to new things so they know how to handle them. I believe I can identify this transformation, but we here at UA are uniquely situated to teach him that control he desperately needs. Are you going to keep him in a cage? Inko said. Never, madam, Nezu said. I know what that is like. No one should be kept in a cage. We have housing that you and your son can move into. He can go outside to play. Give me 2 weeks if you don't like my answers. There are other options. 2 weeks. Inko looked at Hasashi. You have 2 weeks, Hasashi said. Unless it is Kana you send Masa, then I don't care what happens. We will never return to the HSPC. General, good day. We would like to see our son now. Please allow me to escort you, All Might said, breaking his silence and leading them out the door. Once the door closed, Masa glared at Nezu. What are you playing at? The HSPC wishes to have all of not only Hero Society but all of Japan in its pocket, Nezu said. Overwatch is trying to rule everything. Do not think for 1 second that your erasures have not gone unnoticed. Thunderbolt is afraid of this, but he doesn't know that HSPC is the actual enemy and believes that heroes will take over the country like what was attempted in South America and that it is only a matter of time before wars break out. He is developing weapons for that very reason. What he should be worried about is the villains and those homunculi that attack the base, Nezu continued. Thunderbolt raised an eyebrow. You both see Izuku Midoriya as another weapon that can add it to your arsenal. And you don't, Thunderbolt sneered. If that arsenal is a great future pro-hero, Nezu said. If you both keep provoking this Hulk, things will not end well. The boy needs to learn control. Not to live in a cage and only be released when you want the Hulk to react and destroy things. I will expect Lady Nagant to arrive post-haste. General, send whom you will, but till then, leave. Take your troops and get out of my school. Do you want to go to war with the HSPC? Masa said. For the safety of Japan, I would go to war with HSPC and the JDF, Nezu said. Good day, gentlemen. Nezu left. Thunderbolt and Masa eyed each other. It appears there is a rooster in both of our hen houses, Thunderbolt said. It appears so, Masa said, walking out. Damn rat, Thunderbolt muttered as he left. 2 weeks. When Inko and Hisashi got to the cafeteria, they saw Izuku look up and try to smile as the young lady beside him was wiping his mouth. Once free, he ran over to them and relished their group hug. Inko, holding Izuku, bowed and thanked the students for helping to keep her son safe. Hasashi got all their names, shook their hands, and thanked them again. It was Nimari who asked hesitantly if they were leaving. When he told them that she would be staying for at least a few weeks, she visibly brightened and asked if she could visit Izuku. He looked at his son, who seemed to be radiating hope. It reminded Hasashi of how he was with Kana. This girl had become one of his heroes. Of course, they couldn't say no, and the two looked like they had just won the lottery. Inko had Izuku call Reiko, who had been calling as soon as the news broke. Hearing the two talking to each other, Reiko asking if she needed to hurt anyone was cute. Izuku was over the moon when Reiko told him that she and her mother were coming to see them. Inko had talked to Amiko, and the woman had told her that they would come to see them after the incident so the children could be together, and she could be there to answer any legal questions. Kana was there the next day. She would have been in an absolute panic if she hadn't had a chance to talk with Inko. Upon her return, she demanded the assignment and was furious about the incident. She could smell Overwatch's hands all over this. She would have handed in her resignation right then and there, but she wanted to make sure her little brother was safe for the next 2 weeks. She dreaded the conversation she would have with Inko and Hasashi, but she couldn't let them return to the HSPC. Her heart swelled when Izuku ran into her arms, crying, lamenting the loss of his custom Nagant hoodie. There was this twinge of jealousy when Nimari came around, and Izuku shared how she was one of his favorite heroes. She hasn't even graduated, Kana muttered. She was surprised that that girl noticed how the Hulk protected people, including her, and that she had engineered his arrival and sedation. Her quirk could subdue the Hulk, which was interesting to learn. Kana wondered if the Hulk was reacting to Izuku's love of heroes in protecting people. General Thunderbolt sent his aide to Takumi. Her love of children would allow her to be softer to the boy, but her mind was sharp and could provide a detailed report he trusted. Kana and Nimari loved watching him play with Reiko when she showed up and seeing his joy in being allowed to be a kid. Izuku didn't mind the tests. His dad, Kana, and sometimes Nimari were right there. Oboro, Aizawa, and a funny guy named Hasashi sometimes came by to check on him. He liked riding around on the cloud, but after a scolding from Nimari, Kana, and his mother, they had to keep it close to the ground. Izuku missed the other kids he played with, but being outside and running around the UA was such a new experience that he didn't mind it so much. The 2 weeks passed quickly, and Nezu called a meeting with the Midoriyas, Kana, and Takumi to reveal his findings. Nimari and her friends entertained Izuku on the athletic field outside the window. Well, what have you found out? Hasashi said. Nezu dimmed the lights, and projections and images filled the room. It has been believed that your son, Izuku Midoriya, has a collection quirk. This quirk allows your son to absorb gamma radiation from the test we performed and that you have performed. This process would have taken a long time to come close to the levels it is at now, but once it had reached a certain level, I believe that your son would have then begun to mutate into a version of the Hulk. Not one rampaging and out of control, but one where they are one being. Your son's quirk is a mutation. Nezu paused. His body was to accumulate this energy, which would then naturally trigger his mutation to evolve to this state. But the sudden and violent exposure that occurred during the explosion accelerated and destroyed this process. To save him, his body just absorbed and absorbed. The Hulk is your son, and your son is the Hulk. They didn't have a chance to merge, so to speak, so that is why the Hulk reacts to fear. It is protecting Izuku. Izuku sees the Hulk as something separate instead of himself. What do you propose? Hasashi said. I believe that with some mental counseling, if we can get Izuku to accept the Hulk as part of himself instead of compartmentalizing it, they will merge, Nezu said. Will he become a different person? Inko said, worried, looking at their son laughing and chasing the boys with a water gun. No, he will be himself but big, green, and strong, Nezu said. He will be what he was meant to be, but much stronger than he should be now. He will be able to lead the life he chooses. He will have to endure the problem of living with a mutation such as his, and he will be mistaken for an adult. Will this work? Inko said to Hisashi. I think it is his best opportunity. Hasashi said, Nezu, we will put our trust in you. Help our son. Ms. Takumi, Ms. Tsutsumi, I have prepared files with all our findings and a detailed report on Izuku Midoriya and his quirk. Nezu smiled as they took the files and left. Kiana whispered, I will be back after I drop this off and tender my resignation. She paused, looking out the window. My little brother needs me. If I may suggest, Nezu said once they were alone. I would contact your lawyer and threaten the HSPC with a lawsuit for recklessly endangering your son. They will settle, and that sum will help you build a custom home for your family. I can help point you in the proper direction regarding schools, clothes, and furniture. He will have to adjust to his strength, but your son will do quite well for himself. He has the heart of a hero, even with the Hulk trying to protect others. Thank you, Nezu, Inko said. Rebirth. It took 6 months of constant therapy, the support of his parents, his big sister, Nimari, and her friends, and even the grumpy one, his biggest supporter, Reiko. She would encourage him, telling him that with her quirk and his strength, there would be no cookie jar safe from them. Imagine the cookies, she would say, making him laugh. Nezu's advice worked, and the HSPC agreed to settle. After finding a suitable location, Hasashi and Inko began to build their home. Kiana may have cried when they showed her what room would be hers. Watching Izuku go through all this inspired Namori to become a therapist. Izuku's eyes were closed, and trees surrounded him. As he walked, he came into a clearing, and the Hulk was sitting in the middle of the meadow. Its hand was out as a fawn was eating out of its hand. The fawn looked up at Izuku and scampered away. The Hulk looked over its shoulder at him and snorted. I am sorry I called you scary, Izuku said. The Hulk looked over its shoulder. I am sorry that I said All Might was the strongest hero. I am sorry that I ran away from you. You are the strongest and toughest hero, and you jump way farther than All Might, and your smile is nicer than his, too. Hulk turned around and looked at him, smirking. I want us to work together. Will you help me be a hero? I need your help, Hulk. I can't do it without you. I want to keep people safe and help Kiana, Nimari, Oboro, Hasashi, and even Shota. Hulk stuck out his tongue at Shota's name. I want to be a hero with Reiko. You like Reiko. Don't you want to be a hero with her? Hulk reached towards Izuku but stopped. I am sorry I rejected you. I will never do it again, Izuku said, extending his hand. Hulk, Izuku together, forever, Hulk said as their hands touched. Yes, Hulk forever, Izuku said. Izuku was lying down. His body began to shimmer. Kiana and Nimari were in the room with him, holding his hand. Inko was seated across from him while his therapist, Ms. Yukina, sat behind her desk. They watched his body grow, and his skin color turned green. They thought this might happen, so they covered him with a large blanket. Unlike when Izuku had transformed into the Hulk before this time, they noticed that his hair was still the curly mop, and they saw the diamond-shaped freckles still on his face. His body expanded and grew, and the couch groaned under the weight. There was a bit of trepidation, wondering if it had worked or if the Hulk was about to start raging. This was why they had Kiana and Namori holding his hand, and Namori was ready to flood the room with her gas. Hisashi was behind the observation glass with Nezu and Takumi, and all the telemetry was relayed and recorded. They were keeping a close eye on his heart rate as the times when he had transformed had been triggered by fear. Once, he saw Namori get hurt during training after taking a cheap shot, and Izuku got so mad that he nearly transformed, confirming that anger was another trigger. Izuku's eyes opened, and he held Kana and Nemori's hands. They felt so small, and he saw them staring down at him. Did it work? He whispered. He lifted his head and saw big green feet sticking out of the blanket. Can you sit up? Kiana asked. They saw Izuku start to move and then blush. He lifted the blanket and blushed more. I lost my underwear, he whispered. That got a good laugh. How do you feel, honey? Inko said, walking over to him. Good, Izuku said almost cautiously. Weird. Weird, how? Ms. Yukina asked. My body feels weird, and so does my head, Izuku replied. It is me, but I can feel this in my tummy. I can't explain it. Is it scary? Nomori asked. No, just different, Izuku replied. Can I have some clothes now? Yes, baby, Inko said. The girls left the room, and Hisashi and Nezu came walking in. Nezu had secured some clothing in advance, taking measurements from when the Hulk had manifested. This version looked more human than ape-like. Izuku had an impressive physique, but there would be an adjustment period. Adjusting Izuku broke many doors, cups, video game controllers, and other things as he adjusted to his strength. It was difficult for the young boy to learn to live in a house of papier-mâché, and he could not do what other children would do, like wrestle with his father or others or play sports. It was Kana and Nemori's love of playing soccer that helped him the most, as he, of course, wanted to play with them and Reiko when she would come by, so it was a never-ending exercise in kicking the ball and not destroying it or hurting others when he did. It took another 6 months of constant training and controlling his strength before he could leave the UA and attend a school with kids his age. Kana had left the HSPC. She filed her resignation alongside her report on the successful merger of Izuku and Hulk. Takumi had taken her report to Thunderbolt, who just snorted and tossed it aside after he read it. The boy wasn't a threat for now, but they would continue to monitor the situation. He had another matter to attend to, which Nezu had referred to with the HSPC. Thunderbolt had a higher opinion of the HSPC than he did of everyday heroes. He considered most of them clowns running around in Halloween costumes. They served a purpose, but he felt that purpose would have been better served by incorporating them into the police. At least the HSPC was some governing body, and the heroes under their umbrella seemed better trained and more aware of their place. In the time before quirks, the JDF had been under the yoke of other nations. After quirks began to manifest and the world plunged into chaos, they could throw off that oppression and take their position as the defenders of Japan. Through their hard work and dedication, the First Quirk War ended. The Second War erupted, and the JDF quelled the uprising and saved the nation. The JDF saw the potential in those with specific quirks and were drafted into service to protect the country, but during the Third Quirk War, those conscripted against their will rebelled, adding to the chaos. The third was a war of villains and those that would become the first sanctioned heroes, those that had become such a symbol that they couldn't just be shuffled back into the shadows, and society wouldn't let them fade away. The JDF lost power in those years, with responsibilities for protecting the nation falling to these costumed clowns. When money and fame are introduced, more and more would flock to this new profession. It grew, as did the laws and schools, to teach and educate these idiots. The rise of heroes had negatively impacted the police and JDF as the safety and protection of the nation fell to the heroes. The formation of the HSPC was met with cheers by those like Thunderbolt, who felt the heroes needed to be policed. The HSPC, of course, were biased, but they seemed to be a solid steadying hand that was required. Thunderbolt would deal with them with more civility, but Nezu bothered him, saying that corruption had spread to the HSPC and that Overwatch was making a play to take things over. That was something that Thunderbolt could not allow. If the people of Japan called for it, then he would abide by the people, even if it was a stupid decision, but that didn't mean it was a dumb decision. He needed to shift his attention. He would keep an eye on the Hulk, but if the HSPC were going to bring a fight, he would make sure that they could fight back. The HSPC was not pleased that they lost Izuku Midoriya, his father, and Nagant. Then they noticed that JDF was starting to dig into matters they had no business digging into, coupled with a rooster in the hen house that had exposed their plans. The murmurs running through the rank and file were unwelcome and needed to be handled quickly to avoid more discord. They were going to have to groom the next one correctly. Fortunately, Overwatch was not one to rest on his laurels, and there was one already on the verge of being revealed to the public. Send in Hawks. First day of school, Izuku had been insistent that they all be there for the opening ceremony. He stood proudly with a massive smile as he posed for the traditional pictures with his parents, then with Kaien and Nomori, separate and together, then with Aizawa, Oboro, and Hasashi. After it was all said and done, he took his first steps into his new class. With the construction of their new home having been completed, the moving-in process done, and his big sister living with them as she began her hero work, it had been a lot of new beginnings. But for all the things that Izuku had been looking forward to, the home had been constructed with him in mind. Large doors, hallways, reinforced walls, and fixtures are all designed to allow him to live an everyday life. His mother looked like a doll sitting on the couch, Size for Izuku. But she loved it even when he rested his massive head on her lap while they watched a show. Of course, there was some ordinary-sized furniture, but Izuku liked to cuddle with his family. Watching him try to hide behind Reiko while a scary movie came on was an image that no one would soon forget. It wasn't known if Izuku would grow more prominent, so things had been constructed in his room and areas with that in mind. The school he would be attending was specifically for mutants. It specialized in those with size and strength issues and had special classes to help with both. Though not restricted to only mutants, as that would be discrimination, the school catered to that branch of quirks just as some catered to intelligence boosting or support item creation. Izuku was happy to see the extra-large hallways. The stares he received were due to his size more than anything, as he saw all kinds of mutations, so other than being extra-large, he was just another student. He wasn't the only one. He saw a girl during the ceremony and was happy to see her in his class. They had 2 enormous desks at the back of the room. She was a tall, fox-like girl, about a foot shorter than Izuku. She has blonde hair that reaches just to her shoulders, with a single strand hanging down the right side of her face. She has large blue eyes with bushy eyelashes and pointed ears. Her features include green fur and a white furry underbelly. Her name was Josei Ippon. Her voice was calm, as she was timid when she introduced herself to Izuku, at the encouragement of a girl with pink skin, light pink hair, black scalar eyes with yellow pupils, and 2 small horns peeking out of her curly hair. Izuku couldn't help but smile when Josei introduced herself. She turned to look at the pink-skinned girl to get her approval, and Josei received 2 thumbs up. You would have thought that she had won the lottery. She did this little wiggle dance in her seat as her tail swished from side to side. It is a pleasure to meet you. I am Izuku Midoriya, he replied. Mina Ashido, the pink-skinned girl said. That was how it began, with a pink-skinned alien-loving girl, a large fox girl, and a green-skinned behemoth. Mina quickly established herself as the ringleader. Josei was too shy to go against her best friend or nearly anyone, and Izuku was in the habit of deferring to a girl who took charge for his whole life. With his mother, Reiko, Kana, and Nimori, Mina was unstoppable, with the 2 most prominent people in the school behind her. It's not that Mina was a criminal mastermind, a bully, or even mean, but no cookie jar would be safe from her ever again. Her friends had such large lunches that they always had an extra cookie to share with her. There was trouble when she got Izuku to buy tickets for Alien, the Monarch instead of Brave Rabbit and the Forest of Mystery. But when Josei and Izuku had nightmares that night, they all received a tongue lashing, Mina getting it the worst from her parents, Josei's parents, Inko, Kana, and Nimori. She was sullen about the whole affair until Izuku introduced her to Reiko, someone with whom she could share her love of scary things. While Mina tends to focus on the sci-fi and Reiko the supernatural, they find common ground. It saved Josei and Izuku from having to get pulled in as much. Izuku would watch some scary things, but he had limits. Josie was out at even the slightest bit of horror. Even suspense was not her cup of tea. As they all got older, they began to venture outside their bubble. They had to deal with the trouble their mutations would cause. Izuku and Josie were constantly mistaken for adults. Once Josei began to go through puberty, she had to suffer the same problems with guys of an age who had no business talking to her and making rude and uncomfortable remarks. Thankfully for her, Mina was a firecracker and did not have any of that, and Izuku had been taught by his sisters that there was no way to talk to a girl, so he wouldn't let it stand. Izuku's stature was enough to make most turns and run, but a group decided they wanted to get handsy, and the growl from Izuku made them freeze. He only shoved them away but went flying. It made Josei and Mina's hearts skip a beat when he pushed them away after the growl and stood protectively before the girls. However, Izuku was taken to the police station when the men made false claims, and the officer wouldn't believe his or the girls' statements. Once his big sister, the pro-hero Lady Nagant, came down to the station, they were willing to listen and look at Izuku's identification, which stated he was a child with a mutation quirk. Nagant was unhappy with the officers, but after hearing the story, she took the kids out for ice cream sundaes. It wouldn't be the first dust-up with the law that Izuku would have. Josie and Izuku even had some local pro-heroes detain them while playing in the park for suspicious behavior. It was Izuku's first experience with being discriminated for his mutation, but it wouldn't be his last. He and Josei suffered the most due to their size, with adults automatically assuming they were adults and not children. Several phone calls were placed about suspicious people in the park when they were trying to play with other children. The non-mutant children were afraid when they came into a park about playing with them, but once they saw how much fun Mina was having, it would be the icebreaker that made it okay to play with them. That was not to say that parents didn't take their children away or, as mentioned before, call the police or local pro-heroes who would hassle them for suspicious behavior. It was always the same heroes that did it, a trio themed after different sports. The baseball hero, umpire, the soccer hero, striker, and the sumo hero, Ozeki. Ozeki had a grudge against Izuku when, during a stop, he intimidated Josie, Reiko, and Mina when Izuku stepped in between them. Ozeki decided to shove Izuku, and Izuku did not move. Instead, a guttural growl rumbled past Izuku's lips, and the desire to push back roared in his mind. But Izuku took a deep breath and just stood his ground, telling the hero to be nice to his friends. The other heroes, once they understood what was happening because they talked to the children and looked at Josie and Izuku's unique identification, would take some time to play with them before resuming their patrol. There was also the problem that most parks did not have things sized or capable of supporting people like Izuku, who weighed in at close to half a ton and stood just over 7 feet tall. Josie, after puberty, was now 6 foot 7 inches. So, places the two of them could run around and play outside of their particular school were few, far, and in between. There were some unique parks in the city where they could play, but getting there was difficult. They had to ride a particular bus or wait for a special train with a specific train car. He had to sit in the back of a truck when he went somewhere with his parents. He tried to keep a happy demeanor, but having to constantly explain his presence somewhere when they were trying to be children and having an everyday life angered him. He was thankful for his sister Nemi and how she always made time to talk to or spend time with him, but she was busy with school and her internships. The same goes for Oboro, Aizawa, and Hisashi. They make as much time for him as possible. His big sister Kana always came and checked on him when she came home from patrol, would make him sit with her and listen to his day, and tell him about the exciting parts of hers. In Izuku's opinion, having sisters was the best. They always made him feel special, not because he was big and green but because he was just him. They hammered him about his grades, training, behavior, style, and appearance. The boys were constantly training him on how to control his strength in a fight and be more than a wild brawler. Knowing how to control his strength and attacks would put him in control of the battle. Besides, it was great sparring practice for them against a bigger opponent. The video of Izuku walking across the room with all three of them trying to take his leg was reminiscent of those videos of a father doing that same thing with his children. Of course, Nomori would tease him about his girlfriends, as he was always with Josie and Mina. And then Reiko would be around as much as she could, but they would always talk on the phone. Kiana was the one who bought him his first cell phone, which was the size of what ordinary people call a tablet. Izuku would blush and sputter, trying to declare they weren't his girlfriends, at least not in the manner they were implying. It didn't help that he traveled to Reiko's hometown to take her to a dance. He took Josie and Mina to her first dance, and the fact that he took them both simultaneously added to his sister's teasing. Or when they found all four asleep in a giant cuddle pile. But it wasn't just teasing, they made him train. Once Nomori and the boys went pro, they ensured he was in the hero gyms working out, studying hard, and doing his best. It wasn't a question that he would be a hero. He wanted to be there by his sister's side. He had to join their agency, Legacy. He wanted to be with Lady Nagant, Miss Midnight, Loud Cloud, Eraser Head, and Present Mike. Hasashi was proud of the man his son was becoming. Nezu, interested in his research into gamma rays as an energy source, had set him up in a lab, allowing him to continue his research. There were times, though, that he and his wife were wistful about the times before the merge when Izuku was smaller and some of the things that had been lost because of it. But their son was alive, happy, and had friends. This was the form he would have entered eventually. So they just concentrated on making memories or experiences they could all share, such as outdoor adventures and specialized trips. Izuku in puberty. Izuku grew up surrounded by women and girls. His best friends were all girls. He had a few guy friends but was naturally closer with Reiko, Mina, and Josei. He was the first pick for anything in athletics. He loved soccer and running and had no issue playing without his shirt. The girls in his class and school appreciated his phenomenal physique, even if his size scared them. He always did. His sisters made him work, and he was their gym buddy. He worked out with the guys as well. The problem with being a 7-foot-tall Hulk is that none of the telltale signs of him entering puberty existed. The only thing that could be pointed to was his voice. After the merger, it was still Izuku's voice, with a bit more gravitas. Then there was the pool party. The awkwardness of early teens in the throes of puberty, mixed with water, bathing suits, and newly discovered interests in the opposite or the same sex, was always a recipe for fun. Now Izuku had noticed that a particular part of his body had decided that it had reached the stage of his life to come alive, and it didn't seem to care when that happened. Watching a program with his sisters where the kissing had been icky before was now very interesting, a bit too interesting. When the wind blew up Mina's skirt, he saw her Marvin the Martian underwear, or Josie's stripped underwear. He was struggling with the fact that he remembered those facts. If he was doing something wrong, then there was the other problem. Due to his height, he got a bird's eye view down the tops of some shirts when he didn't mean to. Then, the way it felt when Reiko would sit on his shoulders, she had done it for years, but now, when she did it, it made him feel funny. Now, crushes are normal. There is nothing wrong with having a crush. A few girls had a crush on Izuku, and he may have taken them to a dance or would always step up to defend them if the situation called for it. Or have held up someone's father's car one-handed while sweating in the hot sun, but that was not the point. The point is that while the girls had started transitioning into women, the changes to their bodies made it apparent that those telltale signs were absent in Izuku, leaving some questions. He had often gone swimming with Reiko, Mina, and Josie. It wasn't a new experience, but it had been a while, and between then and now, he had started going through changes. So it was time for the awkward flirting to begin, and Izuku had to deal with his new friend, who was trying to stand up and get everyone's attention at nearly all times. He was so embarrassed and confused, it was a bit much for him. Thankfully, though, he had two very loving, attentive, endearing, cuddling, and protective sisters who noticed and told Hasashi, who got to sit down and have the world's most awkward conversation with this Goliath of a son. Then he got the talk from Oboro, Aizawa, and Hisashi, and his mother tried, and he drew the line at that one and fled. It was an awkward time dealing with these blossoming emotions that are complicated. Navigating the waters of puberty is never a fun time. In the first wet dream, Izuku wanted to die. He was so embarrassed trying to figure out the washing machine. It could have been a terrible thing, or the best thing was that those same loving, attentive, endearing, overly attached, and protective sisters were the ones to find him. He wanted to die, but they just walked him through getting the machine running, and it was their turn to talk with their little brother. It wasn't the same talk or them talking at him. He was nervous and scared, but they sat him down and let him talk, ask his questions, and express his concerns or concerns. Most of the other conversations had been about him being talked to instead of with. But his sisters always made him feel safe and secure. They were such a large part of his life that the awkwardness of the conversation quickly fell away as they did what they did best for him and be his heroes. They always made things better. They sat and talked with him till he felt better. Izuku, looking like a little kid, sat squirming in his seat, rubbing his hands together. "How do you know if you like someone?" he said, blushing. Kiana and Nomori took a deep breath. They had some ideas but wondered if some other hussy had been making a move on their little brother while they were working. They knew letting him go to that amusement park with Oboro and Mike was a terrible idea. Girl talk Josie, Mina, and Reiko sat around the table, looking at each other. "I want to say that I am attracted to Izuku, and I would like to pursue a romantic relationship with him," Reiko said after taking a deep breath. "I wanted to know if I was the only one." To their surprise, Josie spoke first. Josie was the shyest of the group, the shyest girl in school. Despite her imposing nature, the girl was defined as a gentle giant and did not like confrontation. "I like him because he always makes me feel safe, and I don't feel different around him," Josie said. "But I don't want to be a hero. I don't know what I want to do. I just want a quiet life." Mina smiled at her friend. "That is fine, Josie, there is nothing wrong with that." She looked at Reiko. "He always treats everyone nicely. He is the first to stand up if something is wrong or someone messes with us in public. Even if it gets him in trouble because they all think he is an adult. He has come so far from the ghost on the mountain," Reiko said after a moment. "Watching him, I fell for him. Josie and Mina, you are very dear friends of mine, and I don't want this to ruin our friendship. So I thought it would be best to discuss this. I like Izuku, but I don't think I like him like that. I always want him in my life. Someone who understands the trouble mutants like us have to go through, someone I can rely on and talk to when I am feeling blue. Josie said, her voice coming out strong. Do you have dreams of kissing him? Mina asked. Josie shook her head. I just like being around him. Josie paused and thought about it. If I think about it is like when I am with you too, I just want to be around you. I don't think I like him. Mina. Reiko turned to the pink-skinned girl. I like him, but I think it is only as a friend. If you can find something, your friend is a kind of hot, like when that growl comes out, or he is being protective, Mina said, tapping her chin. Izuku is cute, but I think I am with Josie because I want to be his friend. Mina smiled, so if you want him, he is all yours. Josie squeaked, does that mean they will hold hands, and kiss? Josie hid behind her hands. I would like to do those things with him. Yes, Reiko said, a far-off look on her face as she imagined those events. Yeah, she has a crush on him, Mina teased. Reiko blushed. I am unsure of how to proceed. Well, we are going to the same school next year, Mina said. I highly doubt some girl is going to lay eyes on him and fall for him instantly. I wouldn't worry, just let things go, we need to figure out how he feels. It will be nice seeing him every day, Reiko mused. Thank you both. First day of a new school. Yui Kodai was a quiet girl, she always chose to speak only when necessary. She hadn't given much thought to entering a new school, she kept to herself mostly. She arrived on campus for her first day, looked at the board for her class assignment, and walked to her class. She was one of the first to come, and when she walked in, she noticed the two huge desks at the back of the class. She tilted her head, wondering who would be the ones to fill the seats. As more of the students filled in, she took notice as they would be her classmates for the upcoming year at least. The room was getting louder as the students filed in, only a few empty seats, including the two desks at the back. She had turned her attention to the outside world when the door opened, and the room went silent. She looked to the door, her eyes widened, and her heart thumped in her chest. It was him. He was different, but it was him, the green beast from news all those years ago. He looked different, but she knew that it was him. He was followed by a large girl with some animal mutation, but she was more concerned with the green behemoth that had never left her mind. Unconsciously, she had placed her hand over her heart, which was thumping so hard she thought it would burst out of her chest. She occasionally dreamed of meeting him, and ever since she saw the news broadcast, she had wanted to meet him. After she heard nothing about a pro-hero that matched his description, she assumed he was gone. But something about it was always in the back of her mind. Now, here he was, she couldn't stop the smile that spread. Yui had just fallen in love. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.